I pushed open the door to my childhood home expecting Christmas lights and laughter. Instead, darkness swallowed me whole. In the kitchen's pale moonlight, Grandpa sat alone with a single peanut butter sandwich. The note on the fridge stopped my heart. Georgia used your holiday money for Tyler's Vegas trip. Watch Dad for the week. My $20,000 contribution for the family reunion gone. Grandpa's weathered hand touched mine. They'll regret this, he whispered. I smiled already, knowing he was right. The silence in the house felt heavier than any storm I'd weathered in Manhattan. I flicked the light switch, but nothing happened. Moving through the darkness, I found Grandpa still at the table, his sandwich barely touched. How long have you been sitting here in the dark? I asked, pulling out my phone's flashlight. Since yesterday morning, he said quietly. Power company cut it off 3 days ago. My stomach churned. The $20,000 I'd sent wasn't just for some elaborate holiday party. It was meant to cover 6 months of household expenses while I figured out a better care situation for Grandpa. I'd been sending money regularly for 2 years, always through my mother, always trusting her word that it went to his care. I opened the refrigerator and the smell hit me immediately. Spoiled milk, rotting vegetables. The freezer was a mess of defrosted ice cream and meat that had gone bad. Grandpa had been living like this for days. Where's Mom? I managed to ask, though rage was building in my chest like a tidal wave. Left 4 days ago, said she'd be back after Christmas. Took Tyler to Vegas for some big opportunity he couldn't miss. Grandpa's voice held no surprise, just resignation. I started opening cabinets, finding them mostly empty. A few cans of soup, some stale crackers, that jar of peanut butter. The fury inside me grew with each bare shelf. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Hope you made it safe. Take good care of Dad. We'll be back next week. Tyler says, hi. The casualness of it made my hands shake. I scrolled through my banking app looking at the wire transfer from 2 weeks ago. $20,000 sent to the account my mother said was specifically for household expenses and Grandpa's needs. The memo line read, Holiday Family Fund, Dad's Care. Georgia, there's something else, Grandpa said softly. He led me upstairs, moving slowly in the darkness. We passed his bedroom, and I noticed the door was shut. Strange, since he always kept it open for airflow. When I reached for the handle, he stopped me. Not my room anymore, he said. Inside, I found 3 air mattresses, men's clothing scattered everywhere, beer cans on his antique dresser. The room reeked of cigarette smoke and something worse. My grandfather's awards from his 40 years as a school principal were shoved in a corner, some frames broken. Tyler's friends from his poker group, Grandpa explained. Your mother said they needed a place to stay, said they'd pay rent. How much rent, I asked, though I already suspected the answer. $500 each per week. Been here 6 weeks now. His voice cracked slightly. Never seen a penny of it. $3,000 a week. For 6 weeks. $18,000 on top of everything else I'd been sending. The math made me dizzy. Where have you been sleeping? He didn't answer, just started down toward the basement. Each step on those old stairs seemed to echo my growing rage. The basement was musty cold, exactly 58 degrees, according to the ancient thermometer on the wall. In the corner, a camping cot with a thin blanket. A space heater unplugged because there was no power. A flashlight and a few library books on an overturned box. It's not so bad, Grandpa said. Quiet down here. That's when I lost it. Not in front of him, I wouldn't do that. But I excused myself, went to the bathroom, and let silent tears of fury fall. My 82-year-old grandfather, a man who dedicated his life to educating children, who'd raised my mother alone after Grandma died, who'd never asked anyone for anything, was sleeping in a basement while strangers occupied his room. I composed myself and returned to find him trying to tidy up his makeshift bedroom. Stop, I said firmly. You're not sleeping here another night. Back upstairs, I used my phone to search through the pile of mail on the kitchen counter. Utility bills all past due, medical bills unopened. And then I found them the printed emails between my mother and Tyler left carelessly next to the computer. Mom G just sent the money. $20K like clockwork. Tyler's email from 2 weeks ago. Perfect timing. Already booked the Vegas suite. $5,000 for the week, but worth it for the connections. Tell her it's for Dad if she asks. My mother's response. What about the old man? He's getting worse. Tyler again. Georgia will handle it when she comes for Christmas. She always does. We deserve this break after dealing with him all year. Dealing with him. Like Grandpa was some burden they'd heroically carried. I'd been sending them $4,000 a month, minimum plus extra, for emergencies, holidays, medical expenses. Nearly $60,000 this year alone. Another email chain, this one from 3 months ago. G wants to hire a home care aide for Dad. Told her we've got it covered. That's another $1,000 a month we can pocket if she doesn't find out. They'd been planning this abandonment for months. Every call where my mother assured me Grandpa was doing wonderfully, every photo she'd sent of him, supposedly at nice restaurants or family gatherings, every update about his improving health, all lies. I found Grandpa's medication bottles all empty, prescriptions that should have been filled 2 weeks ago, heart medication, blood pressure pills, the diabetes medication that kept his levels stable, all empty. When did you run out? I asked him. 10 days ago. Your mother said she'd refill them when she got back. 10 days without critical medications. I thought about the $4,500 I'd sent specifically for his prescriptions just last month. Where had that money gone? Vegas, Tyler's debts, my mother's new wardrobe. The house grew colder as night fell deeper. December in northern Indiana wasn't forgiving, and without heat, the temperature inside was dropping fast. I wrapped Grandpa in my coat and called the power company from my cell. The representative was sympathetic but clear, $843 to restore service. I paid over the phone with my credit card. Should be back on within 2 hours, I told Grandpa. You don't have to, he started, but I cut him off. Yes, I do, and I'm just getting started. We sat together in the dark kitchen, sharing that single peanut butter sandwich because it was all we had until I could get to a store. As I watched him carefully portion out exact halves, this man who'd once hosted Sunday dinners for 20 people, who'd never let anyone leave his house hungry, I felt something shift inside me. They really will regret this, I said, echoing his earlier words. He patted my hand, his touch still warm despite the cold house. I knew you'd come. Told myself Georgia won't let them get away with it. Not my Georgia. Looking at him, then dignified, even in abandonment, protective of me, even while suffering, I made a decision. My family had mistaken my generosity for weakness, my trust for stupidity. They were about to learn how wrong they were. My phone rang, Tyler's name on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but Grandpa nodded at me. Hey, sis. Tyler's voice was loud music blaring in the background. Mom said you made it home. Listen, I've got this amazing investment opportunity here. Guy says if I can get $50,000 in by tomorrow, we'll triple it by New Year's. Since you're taking care of Dad anyway, figured you could wire it to me. The audacity was breathtaking. Here I sat in a freezing house with our grandfather, who'd been abandoned, and he wanted $50,000 for gambling. Tyler, I said calmly, I'm sitting here with Grandpa in the dark because you and Mom stole the money meant for utilities. He's been without his medications for 10 days. Oh, come on, don't be dramatic. The old man's fine, he's tough. About that $50,000, though. I hung up. Grandpa squeezed my hand. That's my girl, he whispered. As we waited for the power to return, I made lists in my phone. Every transaction, every lie, every neglected bill, every stolen dollar. My family thought they'd won the lottery with me, an ATM that never asked questions. They had no idea that this ATM kept meticulous records and had just decided to close their accounts permanently. The lights flickered on just after 10. The furnace rumbled to life. I cranked up the heat and made Grandpa comfortable on the couch, not the basement, while I dealt with the strangers upstairs. That would be tomorrow's first battle. Tonight, I just needed to ensure he was safe, warm, fed. As I tucked a proper blanket around him, Grandpa looked up at me with eyes that had seen too much but still held hope. "They never understood you," he said. "Always thought because you were quiet, because you were kind, that meant you were weak. But I knew better. I always knew better." I kissed his forehead, this man who'd raised me as much as my mother had, who taught me that true strength was in how you treated others when you had power over them. "Get some rest," I told him. "Tomorrow, everything changes." He was already drifting off, finally warm, finally safe. But I had work to do. I pulled out my laptop and began documenting everything. Every receipt, every email, every text, every abandoned prescription, every lie. My family had made a grave error. They'd confused my distance with disinterest, my success with unlimited resources, my love with blind stupidity. Most of all, they'd hurt the one person in our family who'd never hurt anyone. Tomorrow would bring confrontations. Tonight was for gathering ammunition. As I worked, I thought about that note on the fridge, so casual in its cruelty. "Watch Dad for the week," like he was a dog they'd dumped at a kennel. They'd stolen from me, sure, but they'd stolen from him too: dignity, comfort, safety, health, the money I could replace. What they'd taken from Grandpa was unforgivable. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. "Hope Dad's not being too difficult. Remember, he likes his pills crushed in applesauce. See you after Christmas. Love you." The performance of care without any actual caring. The illusion of love without any sacrifice. The words of a mother without any maternal instinct when it came to her own father. I looked at Grandpa sleeping peacefully on the couch and felt the protective rage surge again. They'd all learned soon enough that when you backed Georgia into a corner, when you threatened someone she loved, you didn't get the quiet, accommodating daughter and sister anymore. You got something else entirely. The morning sun streamed through windows I'd cleaned at 3 a.m, unable to sleep from the rage coursing through my veins. Grandpa stirred on the couch, looking better already with warmth and rest. I'd made a grocery run at the 24-hour supermarket, stocking the kitchen with real food, not just survival rations. "Smells like heaven," he said as I brought him scrambled eggs, toast, and fresh fruit. "Eat slowly," I warned. "Your stomach needs time to adjust after living on peanut butter." As he ate, I heard stomping from upstairs. Tyler's freeloading friends were awake. Time for the first eviction, but as I stood, Grandpa caught my wrist. "Before you go up there," guns blazing, "there's something in my dresser, bottom drawer under the sweaters. Might need to see it first." I hesitated, but his expression was serious. Taking the stairs 2 at a time, I knocked firmly on what used to be Grandpa's door. What came a gruff voice. "You've got 1 hour to pack and get out," I announced through the door. "This is still my grandfather's house." Laughter erupted inside. "Lady, we got a lease with Tyler's mom, 6 months paid up front." "Then you got scammed. 1 hour or I call the police." More laughter. "I'd deal with them shortly, but first Grandpa's dresser." I found his hiding spot easily, a manila envelope wrapped in an old sweater that still smelled like his cologne. Inside were medical documents, test results, appointment cards. My hands trembled as I read. Aortic stenosis, severe, surgery recommended within 30 days. That was dated 6 weeks ago. The next paper showed a canceled surgical appointment from last week. Canceled by Martha, my mother's unmistakable signature at the bottom. Reason family unable to provide post-operative care. Behind that insurance paperwork, the surgery would cost $12,000 after insurance. I'd sent $15,000 specifically for Dad's medical procedure just 2 months ago when Mom mentioned he needed some routine treatment. She'd never mentioned heart surgery, never mentioned anything life-threatening. The last document broke me. A living will updated 3 weeks ago. He'd made arrangements planned for the end because he thought no one would help him, Because my mother had told him I couldn't afford it, that I was struggling financially, and he shouldn't burden me. I sank onto the floor papers scattered around me. My grandfather was dying, had been dying while sleeping in a basement, while going without food, while my mother and brother partied in Vegas with money meant to save his life. Back downstairs, I found him dozing again. The medical papers clutched in my hand. I called his cardiologist directly. The receptionist remembered him immediately. "Mr. Hartley, we've been trying to reach him. He missed his pre-op appointment last week. This is his granddaughter. There's been a family emergency. When can we reschedule?" "Let me check with Dr. Morrison." Hold music played while my heart raced. She returned quickly. "Dr. Morrison can see him this afternoon at 2, but Georgia, he stressed that your grandfather's condition is critical. Every day of delay increases the risk." "We'll be there." I hung up and found Grandpa watching me, fully aware I'd found his secret. "Didn't want to worry you," he said softly. "Your mother said you had enough on your plate with your job and all." She lied. "I sent money specifically for your medical care, $15,000. His face went through several emotions, surprise, hurt, finally settling on exhausted acceptance. Sounds about right. She always was creative with the truth. "Why didn't you call me directly?" She took my phone. "Said I was getting confused, might call and upset you with nonsense." He gestured to the kitchen. "Landline's been cut off for 2 months. Another manipulation. They'd isolated him completely, ensuring all communication went through them. I pulled out my phone and handed it to him. "This is yours now. My number's already programmed. You call me anytime about anything." From upstairs came more noise. Time to clear the house. I climbed the stairs again, this time calling the police non-emergency line as I went. "I need assistance removing trespassers from my grandfather's home," I explained calmly. The squatters must have heard because suddenly the door flew open. 3 men in their 30s stood there trying to look intimidating. The tallest stepped forward. "Look, lady, we paid rent. Not our problem if Tyler's mom didn't tell you." "Show me the lease." They exchanged glances. "Tyler has it." "Then you have no proof. The police are already on their way. You can leave now with your belongings, or you can explain to them why you're trespassing in an elderly man's home." "This is illegal eviction," one shouted. "No, this is me protecting my grandfather from elder abuse. You've been living here for 6 weeks while he slept in the basement. You want to explain that to the authorities." The mention of elder abuse changed their expressions. They knew how this looked. Within 40 minutes, they were loading their things into a beat-up truck. I stood on the porch, ensuring they took nothing that wasn't theirs. One tried to grab Grandpa's television from the room. "That stays," I said firmly. "Tyler said we could have it." "Tyler doesn't own it. Put it back." They grumbled but complied. As the truck pulled away, one leaned out the window. "Tyler's not going to be happy about this." "Tyler's about to have bigger problems than unhappy," I replied. Back inside, I helped Grandpa upstairs to reclaim his room. The smell would take days to clear, but we opened windows and I started stripping bedding. That's when I found more papers shoved under the bed. Medical bills all unopened. I sat on the floor and started opening them. Bill after bill for Grandpa's cardiac care. All past due, all sent to collections. His credit built over 80 years of responsible living was being destroyed. And there at the bottom, papers from the hospital's financial assistance program, approved for 90% coverage based on his fixed income. The surgery would have cost him $1,200, not $12,000. My mother had lied about the cost, pocketed the money, and let him believe he was too expensive to save. Georgia Grandpa called from the bathroom. "Could you help me with something?" I found him struggling with his shirt buttons, his hands shaking more than usual. "It's gotten worse since the medications ran out," he admitted. "Fine motor control goes first." As I helped him dress for the doctor's appointment, I cataloged symptoms I'd missed. Weight loss, at least 20 pounds. Swelling in his ankles. The way he had to catch his breath after climbing stairs. All classic signs of advancing heart failure. How long have you felt this bad? I asked gently. Months. But your mother said it was just old age, said I was being dramatic. We drove to the cardiologist in my rental car, Grandpa marveling at heated seats like they were magic. At the office, Dr. Morrison didn't mince words. Mr. Hartley, I'm gonna be frank. You should have had surgery 6 weeks ago. Every day we delay puts you at greater risk. Your valve is barely functioning. What's the current risk level? I asked. Without surgery, I'd give it weeks, maybe a month. With surgery, if we do it immediately, he could have years of quality life ahead. How soon can you operate? I can get him on the schedule for early next week, assuming we can get clearances by then, but he'll need 24-hour care afterward for at least 2 weeks. Done, whatever he needs. Grandpa started to protest about cost, but I silenced him with a look. Dr. Morrison continued outlining treatment plans while I took notes. More tests today, pre-op Friday surgery, Monday. A careful medication regime to stabilize him until then. As we left with a bag full of prescription samples to tide him over until the pharmacy opened, Grandpa was quiet. In the car, he finally spoke. I made peace with dying, you know. Seemed easier than being a burden. You're not a burden. You've never been a burden. Mom lied about everything about the money, about me not being able to help. I've sent enough money in the past 2 years to pay for 10 surgeries. Where did it all go? That's what I'm gonna find out. We stopped at the pharmacy where I paid for all his medications out of pocket rather than wait for insurance processing. $800 for a month's supply. The pharmacist, knowing Grandpa, expressed concern. Mr. Hartley, you haven't filled these in weeks. These are critical medications. Family mix-up, I said smoothly. It won't happen again. Back home, I set up a medication schedule complete with alarms on his new phone. While Grandpa napped exhausted from the outing, I called my assistant in New York. Melissa, I need you to clear my calendar for the next 3 weeks. Family emergency. Of course. Anything else? Actually, yes. Can you recommend a good forensic accountant and maybe a lawyer who specializes in elder abuse cases? That's serious. Worse than serious. Criminal. She promised to email me contacts within the hour. My next call was to Aunt Sarah, my mother's sister, who lived 2 hours away. She answered on the second ring. Georgia. How's the family Christmas planning going? Your mother said you're organizing quite the celebration. My mother's web of lies extended far. Aunt Sarah. When's the last time you talked to Mom? Last week. She called to borrow money, actually. Said you were being stingy about Daddy's care and she needed help with his medications. My blood boiled. How much did you send? 2,000. I know it's not much, but a retirement doesn't pay what it used to. Aunt Sarah, I need you to sit down. I explained everything. The abandonment, the stolen money, the canceled surgery, the basement. Silence on her end grew longer with each revelation. Finally, she whispered, Oh my God, I drove by last month and Martha said Daddy was visiting you in New York. She's been lying to everyone. Can you come tomorrow? I need witnesses who've seen the pattern. I'll be there tonight. And Georgia, I'm calling everyone. Martha's been getting money from the whole family with stories about you abandoning Daddy. After hanging up, I made one more call. My mother's cell went straight to voicemail. Perfect. I left a message. Hi, Mom. Just wanted you to know Dad and I are doing great. His cardiac surgery is scheduled for Monday, you know, the one you canceled. The one you told him I couldn't afford. We need to talk when you get back. Oh, and Tyler's friends have moved out. Dad's back in his own bed. Enjoy Vegas. You're going to need those memories to keep you warm. I hung up and checked on Grandpa. He was awake, holding the new phone like a lifeline. I heard some of that, he admitted. You're stirring up a hornet's nest. Let them sting. I've got thicker skin than they think. Your grandmother would be proud. You've got her backbone. He smiled sadly. Martha got my weakness, always looking for easy answers. Tyler got it worse. But you got Rose's strength. We spent the evening organizing his medications, preparing for the surgery, and documenting the condition of the house. I photographed everything: the empty medicine bottles, the basement cot, the spoiled food, the disconnection notices. Evidence of neglect that would be hard to dispute. As night fell, Aunt Sarah arrived with Uncle Dennis and cousins Emma and James. Their shock at the house's condition was genuine. While I prepared dinner with groceries I'd bought, they sat with Grandpa, hearing his side of the story for the first time. Emma, a nurse, was particularly outraged. The medication gaps alone could have killed him. This is criminal neglect. That's exactly what it is, I agreed, and I intend to prove it. Over dinner, we pieced together the broader scam. My mother had been collecting money from at least 6 family members, all told different stories about my failure to help. Conservative estimate $40,000 in the past 6 months alone, all while Grandpa suffered. She called me crying last month, James revealed, said you'd cut them off completely, that Grandpa was going to lose the house. I sent $5,000. Each story added to my documentation. My laptop filled with evidence as family members forwarded emails, texts, and bank transfers. The scale of the deception was staggering. Around 9, my phone rang. Tyler. What the hell, Georgia? You kicked out my paying tenants? They're threatening to sue. Sue away. They had no lease, and they were trespassing. More importantly, Tyler, we need to discuss the $58,000 I've sent for Grandpa's care this year. Where is it? I don't know what you're talking about. Really, because I have emails between you and Mom planning exactly how to steal it. Want me to read them to you? He hung up. 5 minutes later, Mom called from a different number. Georgia, sweetie, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. You stole money meant for Dad's heart surgery and went to Vegas. You told everyone I abandoned him while collecting money in my name. You canceled his surgery and told him I couldn't afford it. Now, Georgia, you're being dramatic. Daddy's fine. He doesn't need surgery. That doctor just wants money. I was at the appointment today. He has weeks to live without it. You had no right to take him without consulting me. You were in Vegas with money I sent for his care. You lost any right to consultation when you left him in the dark with no food or medications. This is elder abuse, she screeched. I'll call the police. Please do. I have a file of evidence ready for them. Financial exploitation, medical neglect, isolation, abandonment. Should I continue? She hung up, but I knew this was just the beginning. My mother didn't become a master manipulator overnight. She'd fight back with everything she had. Looking around the dinner table at family members who'd been deceived at Grandpa, finally eating a real meal with people who cared about him, I felt that determination solidify into something diamond hard. They'd stolen money, sure, but worse, they'd stolen time. Time Grandpa could have had being healthy, comfortable, surrounded by love, instead of abandoned in a basement. That time was gone forever. But I'd make sure they paid for every second of it. Sleep eluded me again that night, while Grandpa rested peacefully in his own bed and Aunt Sarah kept watch from the guest room. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, forensic accounting software, and years of bank statements I'd accessed through Grandpa's online accounts he didn't even know existed. The deeper I dug, the more intricate the web became. My mother hadn't just stolen the money I'd sent, she'd created an entire financial ecosystem of fraud with Grandpa at the center. First, I found the joint account I'd set up 2 years ago, specifically for Grandpa's care. I'd been depositing $4,000 monthly plus extras for medical expenses and emergencies. The account should have had at least $90,000. Current balance, $17.32. The transaction history told a story of systematic theft, cash withdrawals at casinos, designer store purchases, restaurant charges at places Grandpa could never have gone. A $4,000 charge at a luxury spa dated the same week Grandpa had been hospitalized for dehydration. But that was just the beginning. I discovered Mom had opened credit cards in Grandpa's name. 5 of them all maxed out. $28,000 in debt he didn't know existed. His pristine credit score built over 8 decades had plummeted to 420. Collection agencies were circling like vultures. Then I found the insurance policies. 3 life insurance policies on Grandpa, my mother as sole beneficiary. Premiums paid from the account meant for his care. She was literally betting on his death while ensuring it would come sooner by denying him medical treatment. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Marcus Tyler's business associate. He owes us $50K. Family pays family debts. You have 72 hours. I screenshot it immediately. Tyler's gambling debts were now threatening Grandpa and me. Another piece of evidence for the growing pile. By 4 in the morning, I'd mapped out the entire conspiracy. Mom had stolen approximately $140,000 from my contributions over 2 years, taken another $40,000 from extended family through lies, opened $28,000 in credit cards in Grandpa's name, borrowed against his house $17,000 in home equity loans, cashed out his retirement savings, $32,000 gone, sold his car and told him it was repossessed for missed insurance payments. Total theft approximately $257,000, $250,000, and Grandpa had been eating peanut butter in the dark. I heard movement upstairs. Emma was up early checking on Grandpa with her nurse's instincts. I met her in the hallway. "His vitals are concerning," she whispered. "Blood pressure too high, irregular heartbeat. Monday might be too late for surgery." "What do you recommend?" "Hospital, today. They can stabilize him for surgery better than we can here." I trusted her judgment. While she prepared Grandpa, I called Dr. Morrison's emergency line. He agreed immediately. "Bring him to emergency. I'll call ahead. We might need to move surgery up if he's deteriorating." As I helped Grandpa dress, he seemed smaller, more fragile than yesterday. "Just a little tired," he said, but I saw Emma's worried glance. "We're going to the hospital," I said gently, "just to get you stronger for Monday." He nodded, too exhausted to argue. As Emma drove us in her SUV, I sat in back with Grandpa holding his hand. Halfway there, my phone exploded with calls. Mom, Tyler, unknown numbers. I silenced them all. At the hospital, Dr. Morrison met us personally. "Good call bringing him in. Let's run some tests." While they admitted Grandpa, I stepped outside to deal with the barrage of messages. 17 missed calls from Mom. I listened to one voicemail. "Georgia, you ungrateful brat. How dare you turn the family against me? I'm your mother. I've taken care of Daddy for years while you lived your fancy life in New York. You owe me that money. Every penny. I'm coming home right now and you better be gone when I get there." I saved it. Evidence of her claiming ownership of stolen funds. Tyler's messages were less coherent but more threatening. He'd been drinking, ranting about respect and family loyalty and consequences. I saved those too. Then Aunt Sarah called. "Martha just called me screaming. Said you're trying to kill Daddy by taking him to some quack doctor. He's at Methodist Hospital with his cardiologist, the same doctor Mom told him he couldn't afford to see." I figured. I recorded the whole call. She admitted to taking money but said she deserved it for her caregiving. "Send me the recording." Back inside, I found Grandpa hooked to monitors, IV fluids running. He looked better already, just having proper medical attention. Emma sat beside him, charting his vitals. "They want to do the surgery tomorrow," she told me. "His condition's more critical than they thought." Dr. Morrison confirmed it. "His valve function has decreased significantly. We can't wait until Monday." "Do it," I said. "Whatever he needs." "There's paperwork, and we need to discuss payment." "I'll handle it. Just save him." While Grandpa dozed, I met with the financial counselor. The total would be around $40,000 with the expedited schedule. Insurance would cover 60%. I could manage the rest, though it would drain my savings. Money I'd been setting aside for a house, but houses could wait. Grandpa couldn't. As I signed papers, my phone rang. The caller ID showed my boss from New York. Georgia Melissa told me about your situation. I've had our legal team do some research. What your family's doing constitutes federal wire fraud. You need the FBI, not just local police. FBI. Crossing state lines with fraudulent transfers. Elder abuse involving federal benefits. This is serious crime, Georgia. Our corporate attorney can connect you with the right people. I thanked him and promised to follow up. The situation had escalated beyond family drama into federal offense territory. Good. Maybe that would finally get through to my mother. Speaking of which, security suddenly appeared in the hallway. Behind them, my mother marched toward me like an avenging angel, her vacation tan contrasting with her furious expression. Tyler slouched behind her, clearly hungover. There she is, Mom pointed at me. The daughter who is trying to kill her grandfather. Security stepped between us. Ma'am, please calm down. I am his primary caregiver. She has no right to make medical decisions. I stood slowly channeling Grandma Rose's steel spine. Actually, I have every right. Grandpa signed power of attorney papers yesterday with his lawyer present. You've been removed as his healthcare proxy due to gross neglect and financial exploitation. That was a lie. We hadn't done the papers yet, but she didn't know that. Her face went from red to purple. You can't do that. I'm his daughter. A daughter who left him in the dark with no food or medicine while spending his money in Vegas. Security, this woman is no longer authorized to make decisions for my grandfather. If she tries to interfere with his care, please remove her. This is kidnapping, Tyler slurred. We'll sue. Emma emerged from Grandpa's room. Oh, good you're here. I have some questions about Grandpa's missing medications. As a mandatory reporter, I've already notified Adult Protective Services about the neglect. They'll want to interview you both. Mom's bravado cracked. That's not... It was a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. I pulled out my phone. Let me read from your email. Tell her it's for Dad if she asks. That's conspiracy to commit fraud. You hacked my email. No, you left them printed by the computer, along with the credit card statements showing you've been living quite well on money meant for Grandpa's care. Security moved closer as Tyler stepped forward aggressively. You always thought you were better than us. Miss Big Shot in New York. Well, family takes care of family. Exactly, which is why I'm taking care of Grandpa while you two face criminal charges. A new voice joined the chaos. Excuse me, are you Martha and Tyler Hartley? Two police officers stood behind security. My call to APS had triggered an immediate response given the hospitalization. We're investigating a report of elder abuse and financial exploitation. We need to ask you some questions. Mom went from purple to white. I want a lawyer. That's your right, but we'll need you to come with us for questioning. As they were escorted out, Mom turned back to me. This isn't over, Georgia. You'll regret this. The only thing I regret is trusting you with Grandpa's care. After they left, I slumped in a chair. Emma brought me coffee. You did the right thing, she said. I've seen too many cases where family stays quiet and the elderly person suffers. It doesn't feel right. It feels horrible. Protecting Grandpa is right. Everything else is just noise. I spent the rest of the day by Grandpa's side. He woke periodically confused but calmer. During one lucid moment, he squeezed my hand. Heard Martha yelling, he said weakly. Sorry you have to deal with this. Don't apologize. Just focus on getting better. The money I should have known. No, you trusted your daughter. That's what fathers do. She betrayed that trust, not you. He smiled sadly, always making excuses for her, even now. You're a better woman than I deserve. You deserve everything good in this world, and I'm going to make sure you get it. That evening, while Grandpa slept, I met with the lawyer my boss had recommended. Patricia Steinberg was sharp, professional, and appalled by what I showed her. This is one of the worst cases of elder financial abuse I've seen, she said, reviewing my documentation. The FBI will definitely be interested. The interstate transfers alone make this federal jurisdiction. What about protecting Grandpa's remaining assets? We'll petition for emergency conservatorship. Given the evidence, no judge will leave your mother in control. We can also pursue criminal charges and civil recovery. I don't care about getting the money back. I just want them stopped. Oh, we'll stop them. And Georgia, you will get restitution. That money was stolen from both you and your grandfather. Justice includes making victims whole. We spent 3 hours building the legal strategy: criminal charges for elder abuse, fraud, identity theft, civil suits for recovery of stolen funds, restraining orders to keep them away from Grandpa. Patricia gathered the evidence with professional appreciation. You've documented this beautifully, almost like you knew you'd need it. I keep good records. Habit from work. Thank God for that habit. This is a prosecutor's dream case. As she left, promising to file emergency petitions in the morning, I felt the weight of what I'd set in motion. There was no going back now. I was about to destroy my own mother and brother through the legal system. But then I thought about Grandpa in that basement, eating peanut butter in the dark while they partied with his money. The choice became clear. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. This time I answered. Miss Hartley, this is Detective Morrison from the Economic Crimes Unit. We've arrested your mother and brother on multiple charges. I understand you have evidence. Boxes of it. When do you need it? Tonight, if possible. The prosecutor wants to move fast, given your grandfather's condition. I agreed to meet him at the police station. Before leaving, I checked on Grandpa one more time. He was sleeping peacefully, finally getting the care he needed. Tomorrow's surgery would give him back years of life that my mother tried to steal. As I gathered the evidence boxes from my car, I thought about that note on the fridge. Watch Dad for the week. They'd planned to leave him indefinitely, hoping nature would take its course before their crimes were discovered. They'd almost succeeded. Another week, maybe 2, and Grandpa would have been gone. Their financial crimes would have been buried with him, the life insurance policies paying out to fund more of their lifestyle. But they'd made one mistake. They'd assumed I was too far away, too busy, too trusting to investigate. They'd forgotten that love drives people to extraordinary lengths. As I walked into the police station with boxes of evidence, I smiled grimly. They wanted me to watch Dad for the week. I'd do them one better. I'd watch over him for the rest of his life, and I'd make sure they watched the rest of theirs from behind bars. The rhythmic beeping of Grandpa's heart monitor had become my lullaby. I dozed off in the uncomfortable hospital chair around 3 a.m. when the sound changed. The steady beep, beep became erratic, then erupted into a shrill alarm. Nurses rushed in, pushing me aside. He's in VTACH, one shouted, "Get the crash cart!" My world tilted as I watched them work over Grandpa's still form. His face had gone gray, lips turning blue. More medical staff poured in. Someone guided me to the hallway, but I couldn't move. This couldn't be happening. Not now, not when we were so close to fixing everything. "We need to intubate." Dr. Morrison appeared from nowhere, still in surgical scrubs from another procedure. "Prep him for emergency surgery. We can't wait until tomorrow." Everything became a blur of consent forms and running feet. They wheeled Grandpa away, and I was left standing in an empty room that still smelled like fear and medicine. Emma found me there, tears streaming down my face. "He's strong," she said, holding me. "He's a fighter." "This is my fault. The stress of everything, it's too much for his heart." "No, this was always going to happen. The damage was already done. At least he's here where they can help him." We moved to the surgical waiting room. 4 hours. They said it would take 4 hours if everything went well. I called Aunt Sarah, who was dealing with the police at the house. She promised to come immediately. Then, because the universe has a sixth sense of timing, the elevator doors opened and out stepped my mother. She looked different. The vacation tan had faded to a sickly yellow under the harsh hospital lights. Her designer clothes were wrinkled hair uncombed. Behind her, Tyler shuffled in wearing an ankle monitor, the result of his arraignment that afternoon. "Is he dead yet?" Mom asked coldly. Emma gasped. even after everything the callousness shocked us. He's in emergency surgery, I said evenly. The surgery you denied him weeks ago. Good. When he dies, I'm still beneficiary on his main life insurance, the one you didn't find. She smiled, ugly and triumphant. 300,000. Plus the house is in my name. Actually, a familiar voice said from behind her, both of those statements are false. Patricia Steinberg, my lawyer, entered with perfect timing. Mr. Hartley changed his beneficiaries 3 weeks ago, and the house. We've discovered the deed transfer you filed was fraudulent. You forged his signature. Mom's yellow face went white. You can't prove that. The notary already confessed. She's facing criminal charges too, but she's cooperating fully. Apparently, you paid her $500 to falsely notarize the deed. This was news to me. I stared at my mother, this stranger wearing her face. How deep did the deception go? Furthermore, Patricia continued, the emergency conservatorship was approved an hour ago. Georgia now controls all of Mr. Hartley's assets and medical decisions. You have no power here. This is my father, Mom screeched. You can't take him away from me. You took him away from yourself, I said quietly. Every stolen dollar, every canceled appointment, every night he spent in that basement was a choice you made. Tyler, who'd been silent, suddenly lunged at me. You destroyed our lives. Do you know what they did to me in jail? Do you know what those people will do if I don't pay them? Emma stepped between us. Touch her, and I'll have you arrested for assault. Add it to your collection of charges. Security arrived, and drawn by the commotion, Patricia showed them the restraining order. These two are violating a protective order by being within 500 feet of my client. As security escorted them out, Mom turned back one last time. When he dies, you'll have killed him. You and your self-righteous crusade. I hope you can live with that. Her words hit their mark. Even knowing she was wrong, the doubt crept in. What if the stress had caused his collapse? What if I'd pushed too hard too fast? Don't, Emma said firmly. Don't let her get in your head. She's trying to manipulate you even now. Aunt Sarah arrived with coffee and sandwiches no one could eat. We sat vigil as the hours crawled by. Patricia used the time to update me on the legal proceedings. The forensic accountant found more, she said. Your mother had a gambling problem. She's been attending Gamblers Anonymous for 2 years, court-ordered from a previous arrest you never knew about. She's blown through nearly $500,000 in the past 5 years. $500,000? Where did she get that kind of money? Your grandmother's life insurance, your grandfather's pension, the second mortgage on the house, and of course your contributions. She's been spiraling for years. I thought about all the times Mom had called crying about unexpected expenses, the medical emergencies, the house repairs, the car accidents, all lies to feed her addiction. What about Tyler? Owes money to some very dangerous people. The FBI is actually interested in him as a witness. These aren't just bookies, they're part of a larger criminal organization. He might get a deal if he cooperates. 2 criminals raised in the same house as me. How had I escaped becoming like them? The answer was sitting in surgery, fighting for his life. Grandpa had been my moral compass, teaching me right from wrong, while Mom taught Tyler that taking shortcuts was clever. Hour 3 passed, then 4, then 5. Something was wrong. Dr. Morrison finally appeared looking exhausted. He's stable, he said, and I nearly collapsed with relief. But there were complications. The valve was in worse shape than we thought. We had to do a full replacement and repair some additional damage. He's not out of the woods yet. Can I see him? Once he's settled in ICU, maybe an hour. He won't be conscious for several hours, possibly tomorrow. Another wait. I used the time to call my boss, update him on the situation. He surprised me with his response. Take all the time you need. Full pay and Georgia. We're promoting you. The partnership reviewed your work on the Morrison account. You saved them $40 million. Consider this, leave a celebration of your new position as senior director. I should have been thrilled. 6 months ago, this promotion was my ultimate goal. Now it felt hollow compared to the fight for Grandpa's life. Finally, they let me into ICU. Grandpa looked small among the machines, tubes and wires everywhere monitoring every vital sign. But he was breathing. His heart was beating. He was alive. I took his hand, careful of the IV lines. "I'm here," I whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." The night passed in fragments. Nurses checking vitals, alarms that meant nothing and alarms that sent people running. Emma stayed with me, translating medical speak into English, assuring me that each milestone was positive. Dawn came gray and cold. Grandpa's eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then finding me. "Georgia." His voice was barely a whisper around the breathing tube. "I'm here. You're okay. The surgery went well." He squeezed my hand weakly, tried to speak again, frustrated by the tube. The nurse provided a small whiteboard. His hands shook as he wrote Martha. "She's not here. She can't hurt you anymore." He wrote again, "Sorry. You have nothing to apologize for. Nothing. Failed her." My heart broke. Even now, even after everything, he blamed himself for my mother's actions. This man who'd given everything, sacrificed, everything, still thought he'd failed because his daughter became a criminal. "No," I said firmly. "She failed you. She made choices. Bad ones. That's not on you." He studied my face for a long moment, then wrote one more word. "Proud." The tears came then, all the stress and fear and anger of the past days pouring out. Emma hugged me while I sobbed, Grandpa's hand still weakly holding mine. Later, as Grandpa slept again, Patricia arrived with news. "Your mother and Tyler were officially charged this morning. Elder abuse, fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. Tyler flipped immediately, gave up everything about your mother's schemes. He's looking at 5 to 10. Your mother, with her prior conviction, could get 20. 20 years. She stole $250,000 and nearly killed a man through neglect. The prosecutor is taking this very seriously." I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt empty. My mother would spend decades in prison. My brother would emerge a middle-aged man with a criminal record. Our family was destroyed. "Second thoughts?" Patricia asked gently. "No, just mourning, I guess, for the family we could have been. The family you could have been died long before you called the police. You're mourning something that never existed." Harsh, but true. The mother I'd sent money to help wasn't real. She was a character Mom played to get what she wanted. The real woman was sitting in a cell, probably scheming her next manipulation. Dr. Morrison returned that afternoon with good news. His recovery is remarkable. If he continues improving, we can move him to a regular room tomorrow. How long until he can go home? 2 weeks here minimum, then he'll need rehabilitation, physical therapy. It's a long road. We'll walk it together. That evening, exhausted but unable to leave, I was dozing in the chair when a commotion in the hallway woke me. Shouting. Security running past. Then Mom's voice, high and hysterical. "I'll kill her. She destroyed everything. Let me see my father." I peered out to see her in handcuffs, being dragged away by police. She'd violated the restraining order again, tried to sneak in through the emergency room. Her hair was wild eyes unfocused. The gambling addiction counselor had mentioned psychotic breaks during withdrawal. Apparently, Mom was experiencing one. "Georgia." She saw me lunged against the officers holding her. "This is your fault. He's dying because of you. I curse you. You'll die alone, unloved, just like him." They dragged her away, but her words echoed. Die alone. Unloved, like Grandpa almost had in that basement. No, I decided. Not like him at all, because I'd make sure he was never alone again, never unloved, never abandoned. When I returned to his room, Grandpa was awake, having heard the commotion. He wrote on his board, "Martha." "Yes, she's gone now. She won't be back." He nodded sadly, then wrote, "Not your fault." "I know." No, listen. He struggled to write more. She broke long ago. You couldn't fix. We sat in silence, holding hands as the truth of his words sank in. Some people break and heal stronger. Others break and stay broken, sharp edges cutting everyone who tries to help. Mom was the latter. I'd spent years bleeding on her sharp edges, trying to smooth them with money and love. But you can't fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed. You can only save the ones who still have hope. Looking at Grandpa fighting his way back from death's door, I saw hope. It was battered, fragile, but alive. Just like him. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything. 3 days after his emergency surgery, Grandpa was finally stable enough to move to a regular room. The breathing tube was gone, replaced with oxygen prongs. He could speak again, though his voice remained weak. I'd barely left the hospital, showering in the family lounge and living on cafeteria coffee. That morning, while helping him with breakfast, an elderly man knocked on the door. He wore a perfectly pressed suit despite the early hour, carrying a leather briefcase that had seen better decades. Harold, Grandpa's face lit up. "Georgia, this is Harold Hutchinson. We taught together for 30 years. Mr. Hutchinson shook my hand with a firm grip that belied his age. "I heard about your situation from Sarah. Thought I'd better visit before it's too late." "Harry, I'm not dying yet," Grandpa protested weakly. "Not you, old friend. Too late for them to hide what they've done?" He set his briefcase on the bedside table. "You see, I may be retired from teaching, but I still practice law. Have for 57 years. And what I've discovered about your daughter's activities would make a crime novelist blush." My pulse quickened. "What kind of discoveries?" "First, let me establish my credentials." He pulled out documents. "Your grandfather asked me to update his will 6 weeks ago, made you sole beneficiary. Your mother found out, and that's when things got interesting." "She tried to have me declared incompetent," Grandpa added. "Tried and failed, but not for lack of effort." Mr. Hutchinson opened a thick folder. "She hired Dr. Marcus Webb to evaluate your grandfather. Are you familiar with him?" I shook my head. "He lost his license in 3 states for falsifying medical reports. Goes by Michael Weber now. Your mother paid him $5,000 to declare your grandfather mentally unfit. I have the canceled check." He handed me a copy. My mother's handwriting, $5,000 memo line, reading consultation fee. Fortunately, I anticipated this move. Had 3 independent psychiatrists evaluate your grandfather the same week. All found him completely competent, but that didn't stop your mother. He pulled out more papers. She then tried to file an emergency guardianship petition, forged your grandfather's signature on documents claiming he requested her as guardian, also forged a doctor's signature, Dr. Morrison's actually. She forged my signature. Dr. Morrison had just walked in for rounds. Mr. Hutchinson showed him the documents. The doctor's face darkened. "This is a federal crime, forging a physician's signature on medical documents." "Indeed, I've already reported it to the medical board and the FBI. Mr. Hutchinson wasn't finished. But wait, as they say on television, there's more." He produced a stack of real estate documents. "Your mother has been slowly transferring your grandfather's assets for 2 years. The house wasn't the only property. Harold, did you know you owned 3 rental properties?" Grandpa looked shocked. "What rental properties?" "Exactly. Your father left you 3 small houses in Indianapolis when he passed in 98. Your wife managed them, and after she died, Martha took over. She's been collecting rent for 15 years. $2,500 per month total. Never told you they existed." I did quick math. 2,500 times 12 months times 15 years. That's $450,000. Correct. And it's all gone. Gambled away, spent on Tyler's schemes, who knows what else. But here's where she got greedy. She tried to sell them. New documents emerged. Forged deeds, forged signatures, even created a fake LLC to hide the transfers. But she made an error. Used a notary who'd been dead for 2 years. The title company caught it during their search. So the sales didn't go through, I asked. Not only didn't go through, but triggered an investigation. The title company contacted me as your grandfather's attorney of record. I've been building this case for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment. Why didn't you tell me, Grandpa? Asked hurt creeping into his voice. Because Martha was monitoring your calls, intercepting your mail. I needed her to think she was safe while I gathered evidence. I'm sorry, Harold, but it was the only way to protect you. Grandpa nodded slowly. You always were the smartest one in the faculty lounge. Now here's the critical part. Mr. Hutchinson leaned forward. Your mother filed these documents yesterday. He handed me a petition. She's claiming you kidnapped your grandfather, that you're holding him against his will and demanding immediate restoration of her rights as next of kin. But she's in jail. Released on bail this morning, her lawyer is arguing that the criminal charges are false, that you manipulated a confused elderly man for financial gain. She's painted quite the picture of you as a gold-digging granddaughter who abandoned family until there was money involved. My hands shook with rage. Even facing decades in prison, she was still attacking. However, Mr. Hutchinson smiled. She doesn't know what I know. You see, I've been recording every interaction with her for 3 weeks, legal in our state with one-party consent. Would you like to hear her real thoughts? He pulled out an old-fashioned tape recorder. Mom's voice filled the room. That old fool doesn't even remember what he owns. Once Georgia goes back to New York, I'll have him declared incompetent within a month. The doctors at Shady Pines will say whatever I pay them to say. 6 months max before everything's in my name. Then if he happens to fall down some stairs, well, old people fall all the time. My blood turned ice cold. She'd been planning Grandpa's murder. The recording continued. Tyler's guys are getting impatient. 50,000 by New Year or they start breaking things. Maybe I'll let them visit Dad first, might speed up the inheritance. Dear God, Grandpa whispered. There's hours more, Mr. Hutchinson said, detailing every crime, every scheme, every plan. She got comfortable with me, thought I was just a senile old teacher who'd rubber stamp whatever she wanted. Pride goeth before the fall. What do we do now? I asked. Now we destroy her completely. His eyes glinted with sharp intelligence. I've prepared a comprehensive brief for the prosecutor. Financial crimes spanning 20 years. Elder abuse, attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, forgery. Your mother won't see daylight until she's 90. And Tyler, yes, your brother, he's been busy too. More documents appeared. Did you know he's been running a fake charity, Help Our Heroes, supposedly supporting veterans, raised $300,000 in 2 years, spent it all on gambling and cars. That's wire fraud, I said. Charity fraud across state lines. Exactly. The FBI is very interested, especially since some donations came from actual veterans on fixed incomes. One lost his house, contributing to Tyler's charity. The scope of my family's evil kept expanding. How had I shared DNA with these monsters? Now, Mr. Hutchinson continued, we need to discuss your grandfather's actual assets. Despite the theft, he's not poor. There's a veteran's pension. They couldn't touch investments your grandmother set up in trust, and those rental properties are still his. Plus, I found evidence of more hidden accounts your mother created. We can recover most of it. I don't care about the money, Grandpa said. I just want them gone. Oh, they'll be gone. But you'll also be whole. Georgia needs to be reimbursed for what she's spent, and you'll need funds for proper care going forward. A knock interrupted us. Police looking for Georgia Hartley. My heart sank. Had Mom's petition worked? Was I being arrested for kidnapping? 2 detectives entered, but their expressions were sympathetic. Miss Hartley, we need to warn you about a credible threat. Your brother's associates have been making inquiries about you. Marcus Williams specifically mentioned your name. The loan shark. He prefers alternative financing specialist, the detective said dryly. But yes, your brother owes him $50,000 and apparently promised you'd pay. We have intelligence suggesting they might approach you. Approach as in threaten? Approach as in harm. We'd like to place you under protective surveillance. Mr. Hutchinson cleared his throat. That won't be necessary, detectives. You see, I had lunch with Marcus Williams yesterday. Everyone stared at him. Harry Grandpa said slowly, "You had lunch with a loan shark. Marcus and I go way back. I defended his father in '73, got him off a murder charge he didn't commit. The family owes me." I explained the situation, how Tyler had lied about his sister's wealth, how she's a victim too. Marcus was very understanding how I asked. He's agreed to testify about Tyler's fraud. Apparently, your brother claimed you were worth millions, showed fake bank statements with your name. Marcus doesn't appreciate being lied to. He's redirecting his attention to Tyler alone. The detective looked impressed. You got Marcus Williams to flip on a debtor. I reminded him that prosecuting fraud victims is bad for business. He's a pragmatist. Plus, I may have mentioned that any harm to Harold or Georgia would result in me coming out of retirement to personally prosecute every member of his organization for the next 20 years. And he believed you could. Mr. Hutchinson smiled. I've never lost a case I really cared about, detective. Marcus knows my reputation. After the police left with promises to arrest Tyler for the fraudulent loan applications, Mr. D. Hutchinson pulled out one final document. Harold, this is a new will, ironclad. Your daughter can't contest it. Everything to Georgia, with specifically language about Martha's disinheritance due to criminal actions. Sign it now while you're clearly competent and witnessed by medical staff. Grandpa signed without hesitation. Dr. Morrison and 2 nurses witnessed it. As the pen left paper, he seemed to relax like a weight had lifted. Now she can't hurt anyone else, he said quietly. There's one more thing, Mr. Hutchinson said. Martha doesn't know I have the recordings. Her bail hearing is tomorrow. She's planning to claim she's the victim, that Georgia manipulated everyone. The judge needs to hear the truth. I'll be there, I said. No, you'll be here with your grandfather. I'll handle court. But I need your permission to use everything. The recordings, the evidence, all of it. Publicly. It will destroy any reputation she has left. I looked at Grandpa. He nodded. Do it, I said. Show everyone who she really is. Mr. Hutchinson packed his briefcase with the satisfied air of a man about to enjoy his work. It's been too long since I've had a good fight in court. Your mother thinks she's dealing with some senile old man. She's about to learn differently. After he left, Grandpa was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. I failed her, Georgia. Somewhere along the way, I failed as a father. No, she failed as a human being. That's not on you. When did she become this? When did my little girl become a monster? I held his hand, wishing I had answers. But some people choose darkness. They stand at every crossroads and consistently pick the wrong path until they're so far from light they can't find their way back. My phone buzzed. An unknown number, but I answered. Georgia. A woman's voice nervous. This is Linda from Shady Pines Nursing Home. I saw the news about your mother. I need to tell someone what she asked me to do. What did she ask? She wanted me to increase your grandfather's medication if he ever became a resident. Dangerous levels. Said he had good life insurance and she'd split it with me. I said no, but she might have asked others. Another murder plot. How many ways had my mother planned to kill her father? Will you testify to this? Yes. I can't stay quiet anymore. What if she'd found someone who said yes? I took her information and passed it to Patricia. The case against my mother kept building, each piece more damning than the last. By the time prosecutors were done, she'd be lucky to get life instead of death. That night, as Grandpa slept, I sat by his window watching the city lights. Somewhere out there, my mother was probably scheming, still believing she could manipulate her way out of consequences. Tyler was likely drinking, blaming everyone but himself. But here in this quiet room, there was peace. Grandpa was safe. His assets were protected. The people who'd hurt him would face justice. It wasn't the family reunion I'd planned for, but it was the reckoning we needed. The next morning arrived with the kind of pristine winter sunlight that makes everything appear deceptively peaceful. I was helping Grandpa with physical therapy exercises when Patricia burst through the door, her usually composed face flushed with urgency. "We have a problem," she announced. "Your mother's lawyer filed an emergency motion. She's claiming you assaulted her at the house, that you threatened her with violence, and she has witnesses." "What witnesses?" I set down Grandpa's therapy band. I never touched her. "Tyler's friends, the ones you evicted. They've sworn affidavits saying you attacked your mother when she tried to check on her father, that you threw her down the stairs. But she wasn't even there when I evicted them." "They're lying, obviously, but it's 3 against 1 and the judge issued a warrant. Police are on their way here now." My stomach dropped. After everything, my mother had found a way to flip the script. I looked at Grandpa, whose face had gone pale. "Don't worry," I told him. "We have the truth on our side." "Truth doesn't always win in court," he said quietly. "Your mother's been perfecting her victim act for 40 years. Heavy footsteps in the hallway announced the police arrival before the knock came. I opened the door to find the same detectives from yesterday looking apologetic but official. "Miss Hartley, we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of assault and battery. You'll need to come with us." "This is ridiculous," Patricia protested. "Those witnesses are lying." "That's for the court to decide," the detective replied. "I'm sorry, but we have to follow procedure." As they prepared to handcuff me, Mr. Hutchinson appeared in the doorway like an avenging angel in a 3-piece suit. "Officers, before you proceed, might I share some relevant evidence?" He held up his briefcase. "I believe it will change the nature of your investigation." "Sir, we have a valid warrant." Based on perjured testimony, he pulled out his laptop. "I have security footage from the Hartley house. Shall we watch it together?" The lead detective hesitated, then nodded. Mr. Hutchinson opened his laptop, revealing multiple camera angles from Grandpa's house. "Your grandfather installed these cameras months ago," he explained to me. "He was documenting the abuse for evidence. Now let's see what really happened the day in question." The footage showed me arriving at the house, finding Grandpa in the kitchen. Then fast forward to me evicting Tyler's friends. Clear as day, no Martha in sight. The timestamp proved she was still in Vegas. "Here's where it gets interesting," Mr. Hutchinson continued. He switched to another file. "This is from a gas station security camera in Vegas. Same day, same time. Notice who's filling up their car." There was my mother 1,000 miles away from where she claimed I assaulted her. The detectives exchanged glances. This changes things, one admitted. "There's more." Mr. Hutchinson was enjoying himself. "Those 3 witnesses, I've done some research. All have criminal records. All owe money to Tyler. And all were recorded on these same cameras, stealing from the house during their stay. Electronics, jewelry, even Grandpa's military medals." He played clip after clip of Tyler's friends ransacking Grandpa's belongings, laughing as they pocketed valuables. "Would you like to arrest the actual criminals now?" Patricia asked sweetly. The detective who'd been apologetic was now angry. They played us, made us waste resources on false charges while they're the ones who should be locked up. "It gets better," Mr. Hutchinson said. "Or worse, depending on your perspective. I have audio from the house cameras. Would you like to hear what those 3 were discussing the night before they gave their statements?" He hit play. 3 male voices filled the room. "Martha said $5,000 each if we say Georgia pushed her, but she wasn't even there." "So what? Our word against hers. 3 beats 1. I don't know, man. This is serious. You want Tyler's guys to break your legs over that gambling debt. This clears us with him." The detectives were taking notes furiously. "This is conspiracy to commit perjury, filing false police reports, attempting to pervert the course of justice." "And that's just the appetizer," Mr. Hutchinson interrupted. "The main course is much more substantial." He pulled out a thick folder. Officers, are you familiar with the Riverside Casino incident from 6 months ago? They shook their heads. Your mother was caught cheating at blackjack. The casino chose not to press charges in exchange for a lifetime ban and her agreement to pay back $47,000 in winnings. Guess whose credit card she used to pay? Grandpa's, I said though. I wasn't surprised anymore. Incorrect. She'd already maxed those out. He handed me a credit report. She opened cards in your name, Georgia. You've been funding her gambling for 3 years without knowing it. I stared at the report. 7 credit cards I'd never applied for, 83,000 in debt I didn't know existed. My perfect credit score destroyed. This is identity theft across state lines, the detective said. Federal crime. Indeed. And here's where your mother made her fatal error. Mr. Hutchinson produced more documents. She used your social security number on loan applications. But she was sloppy. Used her own phone number as contact, her own email for communications, left a perfect trail directly back to her. We need to contact the FBI, the other detective said. This is beyond our jurisdiction now. Already done. Mr. Hutchinson smiled. They're waiting to speak with you, gentlemen. Apparently, they've been building a case about interstate gambling fraud, and your mother just became their star witness, whether she wants to be or not. The detective stood. Miss Hartley, we apologize for the confusion. You're not under arrest. In fact, we'll need a statement from you about the identity theft. What about the 3 who lied, I asked. We'll be visiting them next, with additional units and warrants. After they left, I slumped in a chair. The adrenaline crash hit hard. My own mother had destroyed my credit, my financial reputation, potentially my career if background checks found this mess. I can fix the credit issues, Patricia assured me. With the police reports and evidence, we'll have everything removed. Your score will recover. It's not about the score, I said. It's about the betrayal. She used my success against me. Every promotion I got, every raise just gave her more credibility to steal in my name. Grandpa reached for my hand. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I should have seen what she was becoming. How could you? She's your daughter. You're supposed to trust your children. Trust but verify, Mr. Hutchinson interjected. Ronald Reagan's approach to the Soviets works well with family, too. His phone rang. He listened, smiled, then hung up. That was the courthouse. Your mother's bail has been revoked. The judge saw my recordings. She's being held without bond pending federal charges. What recordings, I asked? You didn't play those yesterday. Different recordings. From her meeting with her lawyer this morning. She didn't know the conference room at the jail records everything. She spent 30 minutes detailing every crime she's committed. Thinking attorney-client privilege protected her. It doesn't protect plans for future crimes. Future crimes. She was planning to hire someone to plant drugs in your hotel room, then call in an anonymous tip, get you arrested, discredited, unable to testify against her. The hits kept coming. How deep did her evil run? She also discussed killing Harold again, he added quietly. Said if he died before the trial, she'd get sympathy from the jury. Mentioned something about his oxygen line being easy to cut. Grandpa's hand tightened on mine. This wasn't just crime anymore. This was pure malevolence. The federal prosecutor wants to meet with you both tomorrow, Patricia said. They're adding attempted murder charges, multiple counts. Will she get out again? I asked. Not in this lifetime, Mr. Hutchinson assured me. Federal judges don't take kindly to defendants who plan murders from jail. My phone rang, Sarah's number. Georgia, turn on Channel 7 News, now. I found the remote and switched on the TV. There was my mother in handcuffs being led back to jail, but it was the headline that shocked me. Local woman arrested in $1 million elder fraud scheme. $1 million. The reporter continued. Martha Hartley allegedly stole over $1 million from multiple elderly victims while running a fake home care service. Her daughter, New York financial analyst Georgia Hartley, uncovered the scheme while visiting for the holidays. She had other victims, I whispered. 12 that we've found so far, Patricia said. All elderly, all trusting. She offered to manage their finances, handle their medical care, bled them dry while their families thought they were being cared for. I thought of those 12 families going through what I was experiencing, the betrayal, the anger, the guilt of not catching it sooner. I want to meet them, I said. The other families. They need to know they're not alone. I'll arrange it, Patricia promised. They'll be relieved to know someone finally stopped her. The news continued with Tyler's arrest at a casino, drunk and belligerent, screaming about family loyalty while being dragged away. The 3 witnesses were shown being arrested at their apartment, drugs and stolen goods visible on the table behind them. My family's criminal empire was collapsing on live television. You did this, Grandpa said proudly. You brought down a criminal organization that hurt dozens of people. I just wanted to come home for Christmas, I said, feeling the weight of everything. And you gave me the greatest gift possible, he replied. Freedom from fear. Safety. Justice. That's worth more than any present under a tree. Mr. Hutchinson began packing his briefcase. The prosecutor will want you both tomorrow at 9. I'll be there, of course. We'll walk through everything chronologically. How long will the trial take? Trials. Plural. State charges. Federal charges, civil suits. Your mother and brother will be in court for years, but you don't have to attend it all. The evidence speaks for itself. After everyone left, I sat with Grandpa as he ate dinner. Real food now, not hospital supplements. His color was better, his spirits higher despite everything. You know what's strange, he said between bites? I feel relieved, like a weight I didn't know I was carrying is gone. The weight of keeping their secrets, I suggested. Maybe, or the weight of false hope. I kept thinking if I loved them enough, they'd change. But some people don't want to change. They want to take. Mr. Hutchinson said something yesterday about you documenting things. How long have you known what they were doing? He was quiet for a moment. 6 months, maybe more, but knowing and accepting are different things. I kept making excuses. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it wasn't as bad as it looked. What changed? You called to say you were coming home, and I realized if they were willing to steal from you, their deception had no limits. I couldn't let them hurt you too. So you installed cameras. Harry helped. We documented everything, waiting for the right moment. When they left me in that basement, I knew the moment had come. Either you'd save me or I'd die with the evidence in place to convict them. The calculation of it stunned me. You were prepared to die to stop them. I was prepared to die to protect you. There's a difference. He smiled sadly. A parent's job is to shield their children from harm. I failed with Martha and Tyler. I wasn't going to fail with you. We sat in comfortable silence as the evening news replayed the arrests. 3 generations of family destroyed by greed. But here in this hospital room, something new was being built. A smaller family, just 2 of us now, but one founded on truth instead of lies, love instead of manipulation. There's something else, Grandpa said, eventually. Something I haven't told anyone, not even Harry. I leaned closer. I have another daughter, your aunt, born before I married your grandmother. The surprises never ended. Where is she? California, last I knew. Her mother and I weren't married. Different times back then. I sent money for 18 years, but her mother didn't want me involved beyond that. Rebecca, her name is Rebecca Chen. Chen, one of the names my mother had forbidden me to use in my stories. Now I knew why. Have you talked to her? Not in 40 years, but with Martha going to prison, Tyler too, maybe it's time. I'd like you to have family beyond just me. Family. Real family, not the criminals who shared our DNA, but not our values. We'll find her, I promised. Together. He squeezed my hand. That's my girl. Always looking forward, not back. As night fell over the hospital, I thought about the wreckage of the past week. My mother in federal custody. My brother facing decades in prison, my credit destroyed, my family name splashed across the news as criminals. But also Grandpa alive and getting better, justice being served, truth finally winning over lies. The old family was dead killed by their own greed, but from its ashes something better could grow, something honest, something real. The police confrontation that started this day had ended with the real criminals in custody. Sometimes the system worked. Sometimes good triumphed. Sometimes coming home for the holidays gave you gifts you never expected. 1 week later, I stood in the conference room of Patterson, Steinberg and Associates, arranging chairs for what would either be a healing circle or a circular firing squad. The family meeting had been Patricia's idea, a chance to expose the full truth to everyone my mother had deceived. Grandpa sat at the head of the table looking stronger each day. His color had returned, and with proper medication, his hands barely shook. He wore his best suit, the one from his retirement ceremony, pressed and dignified. "Nervous?" I asked. "Terrified," he admitted. "Easier to face heart surgery than disappointed family." "They're not disappointed in you. They're victims, too." The door opened and Aunt Sarah entered with Uncle Dennis. Behind them, cousins Emma and James. Then came relatives I hadn't seen in years. Gilbert and Marie from Fort Wayne, Anthony from Chicago, elderly Aunt Dorothy who'd driven 3 hours despite her arthritis. But it wasn't just family filing in. Patricia had invited the other victims of my mother's home care fraud, 12 elderly faces, some with walkers, others supported by their children, all wearing the same expression of hurt confusion. "Thank you all for coming," Patricia began once everyone was seated. "I know this is difficult, but you deserve the truth. Georgia has compiled comprehensive evidence of Martha and Tyler Hartley's criminal activities." I stood my prepared notes, trembling slightly. "Before we begin, I want to be clear. Grandpa knew nothing about the broader fraud. He was a victim, not an accomplice." Murmurs of agreement. Several people reached out to pat Grandpa's shoulders. "Let's start with the family thefts," I said, activating the presentation Patricia's team had prepared. The screen showed a timeline, 2 years of systematic deception. October 2 years ago, Mom told Aunt Sarah that I'd stopped sending money for Grandpa's care. Sarah sent $2,000. Same month, she told Uncle Anthony I'd abandoned the family for my career. He sent $3,000. The truth, I'd sent $12,000 that month for Grandpa's hip surgery. Sarah gasped, "But she showed me texts from you saying you couldn't help anymore." Fabricated. She had an app that created fake text conversations. Here's what I actually sent that month. I showed my real texts begging for updates on Grandpa's surgery that never happened. November. Cousin James was told Grandpa needed emergency dental work. 5,000 sent. Cousin Marie heard he'd fallen and needed home modifications. 3,000 sent. Reality, Grandpa never fell. The money went to Tyler's poker debts. The timeline continued, month after month, lie after lie. Each relative targeted with a different story, all designed to maximize emotional manipulation and financial extraction. Total stolen from family approximately 200,000 over 2 years, I concluded. "This can't be right," Uncle Dennis protested. "Martha showed us pictures of Harold in the hospital." Mr. Hutchinson spoke up. "Stock photos, we traced them. She downloaded generic hospital images and claimed they were Harold." The room erupted. Anger, betrayal, disbelief. Grandpa sat silent, tears rolling down his cheeks. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "My daughter did this. My failure as a father." "No," Aunt Dorothy said firmly. "She was 93, sharp as ever. I've known you 70 years, Harold Hartley. You're the best man I've ever met. Martha's choices are her own." "Speaking of choices," I said, "let's discuss the home care fraud." The screen changed to show business documents. Loving Hearts Home Care, incorporated 3 years ago. Martha as CEO, Tyler as CFO. Supposed to provide in-home care for elderly clients. Would you like to know how many caregivers they employed? How many, someone asked. 0. Not one. But they collected fees from 12 clients. 4,500 per month per client. 54,000 monthly for care that was never provided. An elderly woman in the back raised her hand. I'm Ellen Morrison. Martha was supposed to be managing my husband's care. We paid her for 2 years. My husband died alone while I was at work. I thought he had a caregiver with him. The room went silent. I'm so sorry, I said. You trusted her with your most precious person. My mother, a middle-aged man, added, died of malnutrition. Martha said she was checking on her daily, managing her meals. We found her weighing 80 pounds. Story after story emerged. Elderly people left alone, medications, unmanaged emergencies ignored, all while their families paid thousands believing their loved ones were safe. Total fraud from the fake business, approximately $1.3 million over 3 years, Patricia announced. Where did it all go? James demanded. I clicked to the next slide. Casino receipts, luxury purchases. Tyler's failed businesses, a restaurant that never opened, a car dealership that existed only on paper, a cryptocurrency scheme that vanished overnight. They lived well while your loved ones suffered, I said simply. I want them dead, Ellen Morrison said quietly. Is that wrong? I want them to suffer like my husband did. They'll suffer, Mr. Hutchinson assured her. Federal prison isn't kind to people who prey on the elderly, and they'll be there for decades. What about restitution? Another victim asked. Can we get any money back? Patricia took over. We're pursuing every asset. The rental properties will be sold, proceeds distributed to victims. We've found some hidden accounts. Martha had a safety deposit box with cash and jewelry. It won't make you whole, but it's something. I don't want money, Ellen said. I want 5 minutes alone with Martha. Others nodded agreement. The rage was palpable. There's more, I said reluctantly. We need to discuss the murder plots. The room froze. Murder, Aunt Sarah whispered. I played the recording of my mother discussing ways to kill Grandpa, her casual tone while planning patricide. The room listened in horrified silence. When it ended, Cousin Emma, the nurse, spoke first. She asked me about insulin once, said Grandpa wasn't diabetic, but wondered if insulin would help his energy. I thought it was strange. Now I know she was planning to induce hypoglycemic coma. She asked me about my sleeping pills, Aunt Dorothy added. How many would be dangerous? Said she was worried about Harold accidentally overdosing. More pieces clicking into place. My mother had been planning Grandpa's death for months, polling family members for methods while pretending concern. This is attempted murder, Anthony said. Multiple counts. The federal prosecutor agrees, Patricia confirmed. She's facing life without parole. Good, Ellen Morrison said. Let her rot. The presentation continued. Tyler's charity fraud stealing from veterans, the identity theft in my name, the loan sharks now cooperating with federal investigators. Each revelation met with growing anger. Finally, I showed the last slide. A photo of Grandpa from last week, thin and frail in his hospital bed, next to one from today, healing and hopeful. This is why we're here, I said, not just to expose the crimes, but to make sure no one else suffers like this. We're establishing a family trust for Grandpa's care with multiple overseers. Never again will one person control his well-being. I'll oversee medical decisions, Emma volunteered. I'll handle housing, Sarah added. James and I can manage finances, Anthony offered, with full transparency. Monthly reports to everyone. A network of protection born from bitter experience. What about the others? Ellen Morrison asked. Those of us without family. We're creating a support group, Patricia said. Legal resources, regular check-ins, a system to prevent future fraud. Georgia has generously offered to fund the initial setup. I hadn't actually offered that, but I nodded. It was the right thing to do. Now Mr. Hutchinson said we need to discuss what happens at trial. You'll all be called as witnesses. I can't wait, Ellen said. I've been rehearsing my victim impact statement, 3 pages so far about what a monster Martha is. 4 pages another victim countered, with photos. Dark humor, but it helped. The room began to feel less like a morgue and more like a war council. I have a question, James said. What about Tyler? Is he as evil as Martha? I considered carefully. Tyler's weak rather than evil. He let gambling addiction drive him to horrible choices, but he participated willingly. He knew Grandpa was suffering and didn't care. He called me last month, Marie revealed, drunk. Said the old man was gonna die soon and we'd all be rich. Laughed about it. Any sympathy for Tyler evaporated. The meeting continued for 3 hours. Evidence reviewed, stories shared, plans made. By the end, the family had transformed from scattered victims into united survivors. As people prepared to leave, Ellen Morrison approached Grandpa. I'm sorry for what your daughter became, but thank you for raising Georgia. She saved us all. Others echoed the sentiment. Grandpa, overwhelmed, could only nod. After everyone left, we sat in the empty conference room. Paper cups and tissue boxes littered the table, evidence of tears and confessions. That was harder than I expected, Grandpa said. But necessary. They needed to know they weren't alone, that they weren't fools for trusting family. Martha fooled everyone. Even me and I raised her. She fooled people because good people don't expect such evil from family. That's not weakness, that's humanity. He smiled sadly. When did you become so wise? I had a good teacher, a principal who showed me right from wrong. We drove back to the hospital in comfortable silence. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, meetings with prosecutors, testimony preparation. But today had achieved something important. Truth, transparency, trust rebuilt through radical honesty. The family gathering my $20,000 was supposed to fund had finally happened. Not the celebration of lies my mother had planned, but something better. A reckoning, a cleaning, a new beginning built on truth instead of deception. As we pulled into the hospital parking lot, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Rebecca Chen. I heard about Harold, about my sister. I'm flying in from California tomorrow. It's time to meet my father. I showed Grandpa the message. His face transformed, decades of regret lifting. My daughter wants to meet me, he whispered. You have 2 daughters who love you, I corrected. 1 who's going to prison, and 2 who'll make sure your remaining years are filled with joy. He squeezed my hand. 3 daughters. You'll always be my granddaughter, but you've become so much more. The daughter Martha should have been. Family. Not always the one you're born with, but the one you build through choice, through crisis, through love that survives even the worst betrayals. Tomorrow, Rebecca would arrive. Another piece of family to reclaim from my mother's web of lies. Another chance for connection, for healing, for hope. The family gathering had ended, but the real family was just beginning. 3 days after the family meeting, I was reviewing financial documents in Grandpa's hospital room when Tyler appeared in the doorway. He looked terrible, unshaven clothes, wrinkled ankle monitor, visible beneath his jeans. A security guard stood behind him. 5 minutes, the guard said. That's all the court order allows. Tyler shuffled in, avoiding eye contact. The confident gambler was gone, replaced by someone hollow and desperate. Georgia, I need your help. Absolutely not. I didn't look up from my papers. Leave. Please, just hear me out. They're going to kill me. That got my attention. Who's going to kill you? Marcus's people. The 50,000 was just the start. There's more. So much more. He collapsed into a chair, head in his hands. I'm in deep with people who don't accept bankruptcy as payment. Grandpa stirred in his bed. Tyler, what are you doing here? Grandpa, Tyler's voice broke. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. How far is this far? I asked. Tyler looked around nervously, then pulled out his phone. Can I show you something? Promise you'll watch the whole thing. Against my better judgment, I nodded. He opened a video file. It was security footage from a poker game. Tyler at a table with dangerous-looking men. The timestamp showed 6 months ago. Watch what happens, he said. On screen, Tyler was losing badly. Then one of the men made an offer. We couldn't hear the words, but Tyler's face showed the moment he made a decision. He nodded, shook hands, signed something. What did you sign? I asked. A contract. 50,000 by New Year's, or they get collateral. What collateral? He fast-forwarded to another video, this one from last month. Tyler meeting with the same men, but now my mother was there too. They were showing her pictures on a tablet. Her face went from confident to terrified. What pictures? I demanded. Of you, of Grandpa, of the house. They'd been watching planning. His hands shook. Mom didn't just take your money for my debts. She took it because they threatened to hurt you both if she didn't pay. The room went cold. You're saying Mom stole to protect us? No, Tyler said quickly. No, she stole because she's greedy. But when I couldn't pay, they leveraged her thefts, said they'd expose everything, destroy her. Then, when that wasn't enough, they threatened physical harm. So she chose to let Grandpa die rather than admit what she'd done, I said flatly. She thought if Grandpa died naturally, his life insurance would cover the debt. Buy us time. Us? You mean by you time? Tyler nodded miserably, but it got worse. They raised the debt. Interest penalties. 50 became 100. 100 became 200. Even if Mom had paid the 50, it wouldn't have mattered. How much do you owe now? 375,000, due in 4 days. Grandpa spoke up. Tyler, why are you telling us this? Because they're not just coming for me anymore. Tyler showed another video. This is from yesterday. Grainy footage of men sitting in a car outside my hotel. Different angles showed them following me to the hospital, to the lawyer's office, to the grocery store. They know your routine, Tyler said. They know you have money, real money, not Mom's lies. And you want me to pay your debts. No, I mean, that's not... I'm trying to warn you. They don't care that you're innocent. They see a target with resources. I stood anger building, so your gambling addiction has now put a target on my back. It's worse than that. Tyler pulled up more files. I kept records. Everything, every bet, every loan, every threat. I thought I was being smart insurance against them. But Georgia, these aren't just loan sharks. They're connected. Russian mob. They own judges, cops. That's why Marcus backed off. He doesn't mess with Russians. And you got involved with the Russian mob. I didn't know started as a friendly game. Buy-in was only 1,000, but they kept extending credit, encouraging bigger bets. By the time I realized who they were, I was in too deep. He showed me spreadsheets meticulously detailed, every game, every loss, every payment, but also names, dates, places, a roadmap of organized crime in 3 states. This is evidence of a RICO operation, I breathed. That's why I'm here. The FBI wants this data, but if I give it to them, I'm dead. Even in protective custody, they have reach. So, what do you want? I want you to give it to them. Anonymously. You're already working with them on Mom's case. Add this to it. Let them take down the whole organization. Why would I risk myself for you? Because they're coming for you. Anyway, Tyler's desperation broke through. Georgia, I'm trying to save your life and Grandpa's. These people don't leave witnesses. Grandpa had been quiet, but now he spoke. Show me the photos they took. Tyler reluctantly pulled them up. Dozens of images. Me at work in Manhattan, at my apartment, at the gym. Dating back months long before I knew about any of this. They've been watching her for months. Grandpa's voice was deadly quiet. Since I first mentioned her as potential payment, they research all assets. And you let them... I didn't know. I thought they were bluffing, but then Mom got arrested and I'm wearing this ankle monitor and they know I can't pay. So they're moving to secondary assets. Georgia. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Miss Hartley, heavily accented voice. You have something that belongs to us. Your brother's debt is now yours. You have 72 hours. I don't owe you anything. Family debt is family honor. Your brother explained you are woman of honor. 72 hours. The line went dead. Tyler was pale. That's them. That's Dimitri. You gave them my number. They already had everything. Your social security number, bank accounts, work address. Mom sold information when she was desperate. The hits kept coming. My own mother had sold my identity to the Russian mob. What exactly do they think I have? I asked. Money, but also leverage. They think because you exposed Mom, you have access to all her hidden assets. They think she stole millions, not hundreds of thousands. Based on what? Based on what I told them. He looked ashamed. I inflated everything. Said you were worth 20 million. Said Mom had offshore accounts worth millions. I was buying time. You painted a target on my back worth $20 million. I was drunk, high desperate, I didn't think. You never think, I exploded. Your whole life you never think, and everyone else pays the price. I know, that's why I'm here. To fix it. To give you the evidence that takes them down. I looked at the files on his phone. Names, dates, amounts. Evidence of money laundering, extortion, possible murder. Enough to destroy a criminal empire. But also enough to get us all killed. If I take this to the FBI, they'll know it came from you, I said. Maybe, but they'll be too busy running to care. This implicates people you can't imagine. City officials, state senators. The FBI will have to move fast. And what about you? I'll be in federal prison, safer than the streets, and I'm willing to testify, full immunity deal. I've already talked to a lawyer. The same lawyer who let you bail out. Different lawyer. This one actually wants to keep me alive. Grandpa had been studying the photos of me growing angrier with each image. These were taken at her apartment building. They've been inside. Tyler nodded. They have people everywhere. Maintenance, delivery, even some doormen are on payroll. My safe Manhattan life suddenly felt like a glass house. There's something else, Tyler said. Mom didn't just steal from family and elderly clients. What now? She stole from them, the Russians, skimmed from the money I was supposed to deliver, about 40,000. She stole from the mob. She thought they'd never find out, but they have forensic accountants too. That's why they're so aggressive now. It's not just my debt anymore, it's principal. I sat down, overwhelmed. My mother had signed our death warrants through greed and stupidity. What does the FBI say? I asked. They want the files, all of them, but they also want me to keep playing along, gather more evidence. Wear a wire to the next meeting. That's suicide. Maybe, or maybe it's redemption. He looked at Grandpa. I destroyed our family. Let me try to save what's left. By putting Georgia in danger, Grandpa's protective instincts flared. She's already in danger. At least this way we fight back. My phone buzzed. Photos incoming. Me at the hospital entrance 30 minutes ago. Me in the parking garage. The last one showed my rental car with a note on the windshield. I ran to the window. The car was visible in the lot below. Even from here, I could see the white paper under the wiper. Don't go get it, Tyler warned. They're watching, waiting. So what do? You call the FBI handler I'm about to give you. You hand over everything. You go into protective custody until they roll up the entire network. What about Grandpa? Him too. They'll protect you both. And Mom? Tyler's face hardened. Mom made her choices. She can deal with the consequences from her cell. I looked at Grandpa. His face showed the same exhaustion I felt. We'd fought so hard to get him healthy, to find justice, to rebuild. Now we had to run. There's another option, Tyler said quietly. You could pay 300,000. 700,000. They'll want interest and penalties for making them work. That's everything I have. But you'd be alive. Until the next debt. Until they decide I'm worth more squeezed dry. You can't buy off the mob, Tyler. You know that. He nodded. I know, that's why I'm here. Choose the FBI, choose witness protection, choose life, and trust you after everything. Don't trust me. Trust this. He forwarded all the files to my phone, gigabytes of data. Check it yourself. Verify everything, but do it fast. 72 hours is really 72 hours with these people. The security guard knocked. Time's up. Tyler stood. I'm sorry, Georgia, for everything. I know it's too little too late, but I'm trying to make it right. Try harder, I said coldly. He left shuffling in his ankle monitor and defeat. I immediately called Patricia. We have a problem, I said, then explained everything. Her response was immediate. Don't leave the hospital. I'm calling the FBI. They'll send a team. While we waited, I scrolled through Tyler's files. The scale was staggering. Millions in illegal gambling, money laundering through legitimate businesses, names I recognized from newspapers, politicians, and business leaders. Tyler hadn't just stumbled into a poker game, he'd stumbled into a massive criminal conspiracy, and now we were all trapped in its web. I'm sorry, Grandpa, I said. You don't deserve this. None of us do, but we'll face it together, like family should. Family. The word had taken on so many meanings this week. Love and betrayal, protection and destruction, trust and verification. Outside, I could see men in a sedan watching the hospital entrance, waiting, planning. The FBI had better hurry. The clock was ticking and the Russian mob wasn't known for patience. My phone rang. Dmitri again. You get note. I saw it. Good. We make this easy. 700,000, all problems go away. We even handle brother for you. Clean slate. Handle him how? He disappears. No more embarrassment for family. They were offering to kill Tyler as part of the deal. My worthless criminal brother, but still my brother. I need time to get the money, I said, buying time. 70 hours now, clock is ticking. And Miss Hartley, don't be hero. Heroes die young. The line went dead. I looked at Grandpa, then at the files on my phone. Evidence that could destroy dozens of criminals, save countless victims. But first, we had to survive the next 70 hours. The FBI response team arrived within an hour, transforming the hospital room into a secure command center. Agent Sarah Chen, no relation, despite the name, led the team with an efficiency that spoke of years handling organized crime. Mr. Hartley, Miss Hartley, we're placing you both in protective custody immediately, she announced. The evidence Tyler provided confirms what we've suspected for years. The Dmitry Volkov organization has tentacles throughout the Midwest. Volkov asked. Tyler just called him Dmitry. Dmitry Volkov, former Russian military, moved here in the 90s, built an empire on gambling, extortion, and money laundering. Your brother stumbled into the biggest criminal organization outside Chicago. While agents secured the hallway, Grandpa surprised everyone by pulling out his own phone. Before we go anywhere, he said calmly, I need to make some calls. Sir, we need to move now, Agent Chen insisted. Young lady, I've been preparing for something like this longer than you might think. He scrolled through his contacts. Georgia, remember, when I said I was documenting everything? The cameras at the house. Not just cameras. His eyes held a sharpness I hadn't seen before. For the past year, I've been building my own insurance policy. Your mother wasn't the only one keeping secrets. He dialed a number. Harry, it's time. Yes, she knows now. Bring everything. Mr. Hutchinson arrived 20 minutes later with a box of files that had Agent Chen's eyes widening. What is this? She asked. 6 months ago, Grandpa began, I realized Martha was involved in something bigger than family theft. She was meeting with people, dangerous people. So I did what any concerned father would do. I investigated. He opened the first file. Photos of my mother meeting with men in expensive suits. Transaction records. Phone transcripts. How did you get these? Agent Chen demanded. I'm 82, not dead. I have friends, former students in interesting careers. One works in banking security, another in private investigation, a third in telecommunications. Grandpa, I said slowly, are you telling me you've been running your own intelligence operation? He smiled. Principal of a high school for 40 years, Georgia. You learned to build networks. Mine just stayed loyal longer. The files revealed my mother had been laundering money for Volkov's organization for 2 years. Small amounts at first testing the waters, then larger sums through her fake home care business. She thought she was clever, Grandpa said, but she was sloppy, left trails everywhere. Why didn't you stop her? I asked. Because I needed to know how deep it went, how much danger you were in. And he paused because I kept hoping she'd stop on her own. Foolish hope. Agent Chen was on her phone barking orders. We need a full forensic team on these documents. This changes everything. There's more, Grandpa said. He pulled out a small recorder. I've been wearing this for 3 months. Every conversation with Martha, with Tyler, with their associates who came to the house. He pressed play. My mother's voice filled the room, talking to someone with a Russian accent about moving money through elderly clients' accounts. Clear admission of money laundering. This is admissible evidence, Agent Chen breathed. This could take down the entire network. That was the idea, Grandpa said, but I'm old sick. I needed someone I could trust to act on it. Then Georgia came home. You used me as bait. I wasn't sure whether to be impressed or appalled. Never bait. Catalyst. I knew once you started digging you'd find everything, and you'd have the courage to act where I couldn't. Mr. Hutchinson spoke up. Harold came to me 6 months ago. We've been building parallel cases, his focused on the criminal organization, mine on the family crimes. Together, they paint a complete picture. Agent Chen studied the files with growing excitement. Mr. Hartley, this intelligence is extraordinary, but it also means you're in more danger than we thought. If Volkov's people know you have this, they don't, Grandpa assured her. I've been very careful. Let them think I'm just a sick old man. A sick old man who just handed us the case of the decade, she corrected. We need to move now, both of you. As agents prepared for our evacuation, Grandpa made more calls. Each former student who answered seemed to have been waiting. Tom. Yes, it's happening. You know what to do. Maria, code blue, that's right. James, time to return that favor. Everything we discussed. What are you doing? I asked. Activating the network. By tomorrow, every one of Volkov's safe houses will be under surveillance. Every business monitored. Every associate tracked. You have that kind of reach. 40 years of graduates, Georgia. Thousands of kids who became cops, federal agents, prosecutors, judges. When a beloved principal calls in favors, people respond. Agent Chen shook her head in amazement. Mr. Hartley, have you considered a career change? The Bureau could use someone like you. I had a career. Shaping young minds. This is just the final exam. We were escorted to black SUVs, hospital staff watching in confusion. As we drove away, I saw the watchers in their sedan frantically making calls. Their targets had just vanished. The safe house was an anonymous apartment building downtown. Clean, sparse, functional. Grandpa settled into an armchair while agents set up equipment. Now what I asked? Now we were, Agent Chen said. Tyler wears his wire tomorrow. With your grandfather's intelligence and his testimony, we can roll up the entire organization. What about the deadline, 70 hours? Won't matter. In 70 hours, Dmitry Volkov will be in federal custody. Grandpa cleared his throat. There's one more thing. Georgia, remember I mentioned finding Rebecca? My aunt in California. She's not in California. She's here. Has been for a week. The door to the adjoining apartment opened. A woman entered, my age, but with Grandpa's eyes and chin. My aunt. My sister, really given our ages. Hello, Georgia, Rebecca said. Dad's told me everything. I'm here to help. You've been here a week. Dad called when things started escalating. I'm a forensic accountant in San Francisco. Took leave to help analyze the financial crimes. Why didn't you tell me? Grandpa looked sheepish. I wanted to protect you. The fewer people who knew about Rebecca, the safer she was. But now we're all in danger anyway. Rebecca sat beside me. I've been tracking the money flows. Between Dad's intelligence and my analysis, we've identified over 200 million in laundered funds. Volkov's entire operation is exposed. The family reunion I always wanted, I said weakly, missing only the criminals. Martha knows about me, Rebecca added. She's known for years. It's why she banned my last name from your stories. Didn't want you getting curious about other Chens in the family. Another secret, another betrayal. My mother had hidden a sister from me. I have kids, Rebecca continued. Twins 5 years old. They've been asking to meet their grandfather and aunt. When this is over, we'll be a real family, Grandpa said firmly. The family we should have been. Agent Chen interrupted. I hate to break this up, but we have movement. Volkov's people just hit the empty hospital room. They know you're gone. On her laptop screen, security footage showed men in the hospital, angry and searching. One held up his phone, clearly reporting failure. They'll escalate now, she warned. Desperate moves. My phone rang. Dmitri. You run, this is mistake. Price now 1 million, and brother dies first. We're under federal protection, I said, though. I shouldn't have revealed that. Fed protection, he laughed. I have feds on payroll. You think you're safe? Look outside. Against protocol, I peered through the blinds. A delivery truck sat across the street. As I watched the driver lifted binoculars. See, we always find 1 million, 48 hours, or we start with old man. The line went dead. Agent Chen was already on her radio. Compromised. We need immediate relocation. Wait, Grandpa said. This is opportunity. If they know where we are, we can control what they see. Feed them false information. Buy time for Tyler's wire operation. Too dangerous, Chen protested. Everything's dangerous now. At least this way we fight on our terms. He was right. Running would only delay the inevitable, but standing ground with FBI backing and Grandpa's network gave us a chance. What do you propose? Chen asked. Simple. We let them think they're winning while Tyler gets close enough to record everything. Then we strike all at once, every location, every associate, everyone. You're talking about a coordinated takedown of a major crime syndicate. I'm talking about ending this permanently. My family has suffered enough. Chen made calls, arguing with superiors. Finally, she nodded. You get your war, Mr. Hartley. God help us all. Rebecca pulled out her laptop. If we're doing this, let's do it right. I've identified every business they own, every account they control. When we move, we can freeze everything simultaneously. And I'll coordinate the ground team's Grandpa said, his phone already out. Time to see if my former students remember their lessons about justice. I watched my grandfather transform from victim to general, orchestrating a battle against the Russian mob with the same calm authority he'd once used to run a high school. Tyler's meeting is tomorrow night, Chen informed us. If he gets what we need, we strike at dawn the next day. 36 hours. We just had to survive 36 hours. Georgia, Grandpa said, taking my hand. I'm sorry you got pulled into this, but I'm not sorry you're here. You're the strongest person I know. I learned from the best. No, he corrected. You became better than I ever was. You had the courage to act when I hesitated, to seek justice when I sought peace. You saved us all. Outside, Volkov's watchers maintained their vigil, not knowing they were watching a trap being set. Inside, 3 generations of Hartleys planned the downfall of an empire. The meek principal, the distant daughter, and the loyal granddaughter. Not the family Christmas anyone had imagined, but perhaps the one we needed. In 36 hours, it would all be over. One way or another. Dawn broke gray and bitter on the day of Tyler's wire operation. I hadn't slept, sitting by the safe house window watching Volkov's surveillance teams change shifts. They weren't even trying to hide anymore, confident in their intimidation tactics. My phone had been silent for hours when it suddenly erupted with calls from an unknown number. Against Agent Chen's orders, I answered. Georgia. My mother's voice, but different. Hoarse, desperate, manic. Georgia, baby, you have to help me. How are you calling? You're in federal custody. Guard owed me a favor. Listen, there's no time. They're going to kill me. Who? Volkov's people, they have someone inside. I'm dead if I stay here. You have to get me out. Agent Chen grabbed the phone, putting it on speaker. Martha, this is Agent Chen. Are you saying there's a threat against you in federal custody? They know I have the books. The real books. Everything about their operation, Georgia. I kept records of every transaction. Insurance in case they turned on me. Grandpa leaned forward. Where are these books, Martha? Daddy. Her voice broke. Daddy, I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I just needed money for Tyler. Then they had their hooks in me and I couldn't stop. The books, Martha. Where are they? Safe deposit box. First National Downtown Branch, box 473. Keys hidden in my jewelry box at the house inside the fake pearl necklace. Agent Chen was already dispatching units. This could be the evidence to destroy Volkov completely. Martha, I said, why should we believe you? You've lied about everything. Because I'm dying anyway, she screamed. The doctor found tumors. Lung cancer. Stage 4. 3 months, maybe. I don't want to die in a cell or with a shiv in my back. Please, Georgia, one last chance to do something right. Rebecca pulled up medical databases, fingers flying. She's telling the truth about the cancer, diagnosed 2 days ago at the federal facility. It changes nothing, I said coldly. You still chose crime. I know, but let me help fix it. Get me into witness protection. I'll testify against everyone. Volkov, his lieutenants, the corrupt cops, everyone. I have names, dates, amounts. 30 years of criminal intelligence. 30 years. Grandpa's voice was hollow. You've been doing this for 30 years. It started small, skimming from the school fundraisers you ran. Then I met people who showed me bigger opportunities. I'm sorry, Daddy. I'm so sorry. The room fell silent. My mother had been a criminal longer than I'd been alive. We need those books, Chen said finally. Martha, we're sending agents to verify your claims. If you're lying, I'm not. They're going to kill me today. During transfer to court, I heard the guards talking. Please. Chen made rapid arrangements while I sat stunned, my dying mother still manipulating or finally telling the truth. With her, we never knew. 2 hours later, agents returned with a box of ledgers. Chen's expression as she reviewed them told the story. This is comprehensive. Every payoff, every murder, every corrupt official. She documented everything. Told you, Mom's voice came through the speaker. Now get me out. We're arranging secure transport, Chen confirmed. But Martha, you testify to everything. Hold nothing back. Yes, anything, just protect me. The call ended, leaving us to process this development. Grandpa looked older, grayer. 30 years, he repeated. My daughter's been a criminal for 30 years. Rebecca put her arm around him. You couldn't have known. Couldn't I? All those signs I ignored, the expensive gifts she couldn't afford, the stories that didn't quite add up. I chose blindness. You chose love, I corrected. You believed in your daughter. That's not a fault. Chen interrupted. This changes our timeline. With Martha's books, we don't need to wait for Tyler's wire. We can move now. No, Grandpa said firmly. Stick to the plan. Tyler's risking his life to make amends. Let him. Sir, with respect, your daughter just gave us everything we need. She gave us historical evidence. Tyler will give us current operations. Both are necessary. Chen nodded reluctantly. Your grandson goes in tonight as scheduled, but we're adding protection. If anything goes wrong, it won't, Grandpa said. Tyler's finally doing something right. Have faith. Faith in Tyler seemed like a bad bet, but Grandpa had been right about everything else. That afternoon, we watched feeds as agents prepared Tyler. The wire was state-of-the-art, virtually undetectable. He looked terrified but determined. Remember, his handler instructed, get them talking about current operations, future plans, names of corrupted officials. What if they search me? They won't. You're too pathetic to be a threat. Harsh, but accurate. Tyler's weakness was his camouflage. As evening approached, a new crisis emerged. The federal facility called panicked. Martha had collapsed in her cell, possible poisoning. Poisoning, I asked Chen. I thought you had her in protective custody. We did. Isolated cell-vetted guards. Someone got to her anyway. The hospital confirmed poison, though not fatal. A warning from Volkov, testify and die, but it had the opposite effect on my mother. She called from her hospital bed, rage replacing fear. They tried to kill me. Me, after everything I did for them, I want them burned to the ground. Martha, stay calm, Chen advised. Calm. They poisoned me. You know what? I have more books, better books, hidden at the house. Get them all. She rattled off locations. Inside walls under floorboards buried in the yard. A treasure map of criminal evidence hidden throughout my childhood home. Why so many, I asked. Because I'm not stupid, I knew they'd turn eventually. Every criminal does. So, I prepared. 30 years of preparation. The FBI descended on the house like locusts, finding cache after cache. Mom had turned our family home into a criminal archive. There's enough here to prosecute 200 people, Chen announced, awed. Your mother built a Ryko case for us. 6 o'clock. Tyler would enter the poker game in 2 hours. Grandpa's network reported all Volkov locations under surveillance. Rebecca had frozen what accounts she could trace. Everything was set. Then my phone rang. Dmitri. Your mother talks too much. Brother too. You think we're stupid. My blood froze. I don't know what you mean. Wire. We know about Wire. Your brother, he's bad actor, nervous, sweating. We check him very carefully tonight. They knew. Tyler was walking into a trap. Here's new deal, Dmitri continued. You come instead. Alone. 1 million cash. Brother lives. Otherwise? He made a cutting sound. I can't get 1 million in cash by tonight. You figure out. Smart girl like you. 1 hour brother dies. You have address. He texted a location. Warehouse district. Classic mob meeting spot. Chen shook her head violently. Absolutely not. We'll extract Tyler. How you said yourself they have cops on payroll. By the time you react, he's dead. We'll find another way. But there wasn't another way. Tyler would die unless I appeared with impossible money. That's when Grandpa stood up. I'll get the money. What? How? He smiled sadly. Remember those rental properties? I never touched the rent money. 20 years of rent sitting in safety deposit boxes? Just over 1 million in cash. You have $1 million in cash. Your grandmother's idea. She never trusted banks completely. Said cash was king in emergencies. Guess she was right. We can't let you give money to criminals, Chen protested. You can't stop me. It's my money. My grandson's life. Get the cash. Georgia takes it in your team's follow when they verify the money you strike. That's insane. That's family. He looked at me. Georgia doesn't go alone, I go with her. Absolutely not, I said. You just had heart surgery. And I'll have another heart attack if my grandchildren die. We go together or not at all. Chen threw up her hands. This entire family is insane. No, Rebecca said quietly. This family is done being victims. I'm going too. You don't even know Tyler. He's my brother. That's enough. In the end, Chen had no choice. We'd go in wearing trackers, followed by every available agent. A fortune in cash is bait 3 generations of Hartleys as targets. Grandpa made his calls, and within an hour we had duffel bags full of cash. Life savings accumulated over decades about to be handed to criminals. It's just money, he said, seeing my expression. Lives matter more. 8:30. We loaded into an SUV. Grandpa in his best suit, Rebecca in business attire, me in jeans and a bulletproof vest, Chen insisted on. The cash filled the trunk. Remember, Chen instructed through our earpieces, will be right behind you. The moment they verify the money we move, just stay calm. Calm, right. The warehouse loomed ahead, dark and forbidding. Cars lined the perimeter. Men with obvious weapons watched our approach. Ready? Grandpa asked, taking my hand. No, you... Terrified, but your grandmother always said courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. We parked. Men approached, guns drawn. One I recognized from photos, Victor Dimitri's lieutenant. Old man wasn't invited, he growled. The old man has the money, Grandpa replied calmly. You want it or not. They searched us roughly, finding the trackers immediately. Victor crushed them, smiling. FBI thinks we're stupid. Come. Inside the warehouse, stretched vast and cold. In the center, a poker table. Tyler sat there, duct tape over his mouth, bruises on his face. Alive, but beaten. Dmitry Volkov stood beside him, every inch the Hollywood villain. Expensive suit, gold rings, dead eyes. The Hartley family, he said. Together at last. We brought your money, I said. Let Tyler go. Money first, then we discuss. Rebecca and I dragged the duffel bags forward. Dimitri's men opened them, eyes widening at the cash. Count it, Dmitri ordered. As they counted, he circled us like a predator. You know what I hate? Disrespect. Your mother, she steals from me. Your brother, he lies to me. You involve FBI. Disrespect. We'll pay interest, Grandpa offered. Another $1 million. Just let them go. Another $1 million, Dmitri laughed. Old man, you think this is about money? The counting finished. It's all here, boss. $1 million plus. Good. Now we discuss real payment. My heart sank. We'd walked into exactly what I'd feared, a trap with no escape. Your mother has books, testimony. This must stop. She's dying, I said. Cancer. She'll be dead in months anyway. Months too long. You make her stop or family dies. Starting with brother. He pulled out a gun, pressed it to Tyler's head. Tyler's eyes went wide with terror. Wait. Grandpa stepped forward. Take me instead. I'm old, sick. Kill me if you need blood. Let my grandchildren go. Brave Grandpa, but no, young people learn better from consequences. The gun cocked. Tyler whimpered behind the tape. That's when the lights went out. Chaos erupted. Gunfire, shouts, confusion. Emergency lights flickered on, revealing FBI agents swarming from every entrance. Chen had moved early, triggered by the immediate threat. Down everyone, down, agents screamed. I hit the floor, pulling Grandpa with me. Rebecca covered us both. Gunfire exploded overhead, deafening in the enclosed space. Through the chaos, I saw Dmitri running, abandoning Tyler. Victor and others returned fire, using the poker table as cover. Move, move, move. Chen's voice in my ear. Get to the south exit. We crawled, Grandpa struggling but determined. Rebecca helped drag him as bullets shattered concrete above us. Tyler, still taped to the chair, had tipped over, trying to make himself small. An agent cut him free and he crawled to us, tears streaming. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Move now. Apologize later, I yelled. We reached the exit as the gunfire intensified. Outside, more agents, ambulances, chaos. They bundled us into a medical unit, checking for injuries. Dmitri asked Chen when she appeared. Escaped, but we got Victor and 12 others, plus all the money and evidence on site. He'll come for us. He'll try, but his organization just got gutted. 37 locations hit simultaneously. Your grandfather's network delivered perfectly. Grandpa was being given oxygen, the stress taxing his weak heart. But he smiled. Did you see their faces when the lights went out? Priceless? Tyler huddled in the corner, broken and sobbing. Rebecca went to him, our sister, comforting the brother she'd just met. It's over, she told him. You're safe. No, he whispered. Dmitri always gets revenge. Always. As if summoned, my phone rang. Unknown number. You think you won, Dimitri's voice enraged. I know where dying mother is. Hospital, room 427. Unguarded now, all agents here. She dies in 5 minutes unless you wire 10 million to account I text. 5 minutes. The line went dead. A text arrived with banking information. He's bluffing, Chen said. Martha's under guard. But when she called to verify, her face went white. The guards were called away, told the threat was over. Martha's alone. It's 40 minutes to that hospital, I said. 5 minutes, Chen repeated. He's probably already there. I thought of my mother dying of cancer, poisoned, abandoned, alone. Despite everything, she didn't deserve to die like that. Wire the money, Grandpa said. We don't have 10 million, I protested. We have something better. He pulled out his phone, dialed a number. Tom, remember that favor from 97, time to collect. I need 10 million wired in 3 minutes. Grandpa, what? Tom Morrison, my former student, now runs the largest bank in 3 states. He owes me his career. The wire will happen. We can't let you pay terrorists, Chen protested. Then you better move fast to save Martha. It was blackmail and Grandpa knew it. Chen radioed units to converge on the hospital while Grandpa arranged the impossible wire. 3 minutes. 4. At 4 minutes, 50 seconds, Tom Morrison confirmed the wire sent. My phone rang. Smart family, Dimitri said. Mother lives. But this isn't over. 10 million buys you 1 week. Then we finish this properly. Dimitri, I said, suddenly exhausted. It is over. Your men are arrested. Your accounts frozen. Your empire is dead. Take the money and run. You've lost. Lost. He laughed, cold and bitter. Little girl, I've been doing this since before you were born. You won battle. War continues. 1 week. He hung up. Moments later, Chen confirmed Martha was safeguards restored. Dimitri had vanished again, $10 million richer. I'm sorry I told Grandpa, your friend's money. Tom's a billionaire. He'll survive. And we'll get it back when we catch Dimitri. If we catch him. When? Evil men always make one mistake. They can't stop being evil. The medical team insisted on taking Grandpa to the hospital, the stress dangerous for his heart. As they loaded him into an ambulance, he gripped my hand. You did it, Georgia. You saved us all. We did it, together. Family, he said, smiling. The real kind. As the ambulance pulled away with Rebecca accompanying him, I stood with Tyler in the warehouse parking lot. FBI agents processed the scene, gathering evidence of the bloodiest mob war in decades. Georgia, Tyler said quietly, I'll testify against all of them. I'll make this right. You can't make it right, but you can try to balance the scales. Will you ever forgive me? I looked at my broken brother, finally seeing consequences for his actions. Ask me in 10 years, after you've proved you've changed. He nodded, accepting the challenge. An agent led him away for debriefing. Agent Chen approached. Your family is either the bravest or craziest I've ever met. Probably both. Dimitri won't wait a week. He'll regroup and strike fast. We need to be ready. We will be. I looked at the warehouse where we'd almost died, where family had trumped fear. The Hartleys are done running. Whatever comes next, we face it together. The war wasn't over. Dimitri was still out there with $10 million and a vendetta. Mom was dying in custody. Tyler faced years of testimony and probable witness protection. Grandpa's heart might not survive more stress. But tonight we'd won. A family of broken people had stood together against evil and survived. Sometimes that's all the victory you get. Sometimes it's enough. For now, the story broke at 6 a.m. sharp across every major news outlet. Elderly principal exposes $1 million crime ring. Family's Christmas visit unveils Russian mob network. Dying woman's testimony could topple Midwest crime empire. I watched from Grandpa's hospital room as reporters descended on every location connected to our story: the warehouse shootout, the federal facility where Mom was held, Even our family home now wrapped in crime scene tape. You need to see this, Rebecca said, turning up the volume on Channel 7. A familiar face filled the screen. Investigative journalist Amanda Chen, the one who'd broken the state corruption scandal last year. She stood outside the courthouse wind, whipping her hair. This exclusive investigation reveals how one family's holiday reunion exposed a criminal network spanning 3 decades. Martha Hartley, dying of cancer in federal custody, has agreed to her first and only interview. What she reveals will shock you. She gave an interview, I asked, stunned. When? The screen cut to my mother in a hospital bed, looking gaunt but defiant. Her eyes, the same green as mine, blazed with something between rage and redemption. I was 23 when it started, she began. Young, broke with a baby. Tyler's father had vanished, and I was desperate. That's when I met Victor. She detailed her descent into crime with clinical precision. The small thefts that led to bigger ones, the gambling addiction that made her vulnerable, the moment she realized she was trapped. They owned me, she said to the camera. Every debt led to a favor, every favor to a crime. By the time I wanted out, they had enough to destroy me, so I stayed, and I documented everything. Amanda Chen pushed harder. What about your father, your daughter, the family you destroyed? Mom's facade cracked. I told myself I was protecting them. Keep them ignorant, keep them safe. But I was really protecting myself. My daughter sends money to help her grandfather and I steal it. My father trusts me with his care and I abandon him. I became the monster I once feared. Why speak now? Because I'm dying. Because they tried to kill me. Because my daughter did what I never could. She stood up to them. If my last act can help destroy Dmitry Volkov, maybe it balances the scales. Maybe. The interview continued, each revelation more damning. Names, dates, murders she'd witnessed. Cops on the payroll. Judges who fixed cases. Business leaders who laundered money. Turn it off, Grandpa said quietly. I can't watch anymore. But the damage was done. Mom had just signed her own death warrant on national television, while potentially saving dozens of future victims. Agent Chen burst in. We have a problem. This interview just made your mother the most wanted woman in organized crime. Every criminal she named wants her dead. Isn't she protected? We're moving her to a secure medical facility. But Georgia, she also made you and your family prime targets. Public enemies of the mob. My phone buzzed. Texts, calls, emails flooding in. Reporters wanted statements. Movie producers wanted rights. Old friends wanted to know if I was okay. Then one text stood out, Dmitry. Your mother talks too much. Price is now $50 million. You have 2 days. $50 million, I showed Chen. He's lost his mind. No, he's desperate. This media exposure is destroying his operations. Public attention is the one thing organized crime can't survive. Amanda Chen appeared on screen again. We've just received word that FBI raids are ongoing at 17 locations. The Hartley testimony has triggered the largest organized crime crackdown in Midwest history. Good, Rebecca said firmly. Let them all burn. Tyler, who'd been silent in the corner, finally spoke. I need to do an interview, too. We all turned to stare at him. Mom told her side. I should tell mine. Show people how easy it is to get trapped. Maybe save some other gambling addict from my fate. The FBI won't allow it, Chen said. Then I'll do it anyway. What are they going to do, arrest me? I'm already going to prison. There was a new steel in Tyler's voice. Prison or redemption had finally given him a backbone. I'll arrange it, I said, surprising myself. But you tell everything. No self-pity, no excuses. Just truth. He nodded. Truth. I can do that now. By noon, the media circus was overwhelming. Reporters camped outside the hospital. Grandpa's former students called with support and shock. The story had legs running on every network. Then Amanda Chen arrived in person. I'd like to interview the whole family, she said. Together, show the human side of this tragedy. No, Grandpa said immediately. My family's been through enough. Sir, with respect, the public narrative matters. Right now, you're victims, but social media is already spinning conspiracy theories. Some claim you were all involved, that this is an elaborate scam. I checked Twitter. She was right. Hashtags like "See Hartley scam" and the fake victims were trending, pushed by bot accounts, probably funded by Volkov's people. If we don't control the narrative, they will, Amanda continued. Let me help you tell the truth. Rebecca and I exchanged glances. Media attention could protect us or destroy us, but hiding hadn't worked so far. We'll do it, I decided. But here in Grandpa's room, he's not strong enough to move. Amanda's crew set up quickly, transforming the hospital room into a studio. Makeup people fussed over our exhausted faces while producers prepped questions. Ready, Amanda asked. The red light turned on. Millions would watch this. Harold Hartley. Amanda began, "You're being called a hero for exposing this criminal network. How do you respond?" "I'm no hero," Grandpa said quietly. "I'm a father who failed to see his daughter's darkness. A grandfather who almost let pride kill me. Heroes act quickly. I waited too long." "Georgia, you gave up your New York life to save your grandfather. What drove that decision?" "Love," I said simply. "Family isn't perfect. Sometimes it's broken, but you don't abandon people you love even when they've abandoned you." "Rebecca, you didn't know this family until recently. Why get involved?" "Because they're my family too. My father's blood, my siblings' struggles. You don't get to choose your relatives, but you can choose to help them heal." Tyler, Amanda's voice softened. "You've admitted to terrible crimes. What would you tell others in your situation?" Tyler looked directly at the camera. "Get help before it's too late. I told myself I could control it, win back losses, fix everything with one big score. But addiction lies. Crime lies. The house always wins, and you lose everything. Your money, your family, your soul. What's next for the Hartley family?" I took Grandpa's hand. Healing. Justice. Building something better from the ashes. We've learned that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about choosing each other even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. "Any message for Dmitry Volkov?" Grandpa spoke firmly. "Turn yourself in. This ends only one way. You've lost your empire, your reputation, your future. Every moment you run makes it worse. Show the courage my daughter finally found. Confess. And if he doesn't, then we'll be waiting. The Hartley family doesn't run anymore." The interview ended. Amanda thanked us, promising to air it unedited that evening. As her crew packed up, she pulled me aside. "There's something else. My sources say Volkov's lost support from the Russian syndicate. They blame him for the exposure. He's not just running from law enforcement now. He's running from his own people. A $50 million demand isn't desperation. It's a suicide run. He knows he's finished and wants to take you down with him." That afternoon, the interview exploded across media. Ergar Hartley Strong began trending, drowning out the bot attacks. Grandpa's former students shared stories of his mentorship. My coworkers in New York defended my character. Even some of Mom's victims expressed sympathy for our family's pain. But the real shock came at 4 p.m. "Turn on Channel 9, Chen ordered, rushing in. On screen, a breaking news alert. Dmitry Volkov found dead in Chicago warehouse. The reporter continued breathlessly. The notorious crime boss was discovered shot execution style, apparently killed by his own organization for bringing unwanted attention to their operations. FBI sources confirm this effectively ends the immediate threat to the Hartley family, though investigations continue." We sat in stunned silence. Dmitry was dead, the immediate danger over. "It's not over," Chen warned. "His death creates a power vacuum. Others will try to claim his territory. But yes, the direct threat to you has likely ended." "What about the $50 million demand?" "Died with him, though we'll monitor for any lieutenants seeking revenge." That evening, our interview aired to the highest ratings in the network's history. The family that had almost died together, telling our truth to millions. The response was overwhelming, supportive, transformative. Mom watched from her secure facility, calling afterward. You did good, baby. Real good. Maybe something positive can come from all this mess. Mom, are you safe? Safer now that Dimitri's gone. The others just want to disappear, rebuild quietly. My testimony threatens that, but not enough to risk more exposure by killing me. So it's really over. The criminal part, maybe. But Georgia, I'm still dying. Still going to prison. We don't get a happy ending. No, I agreed. But maybe we get a truthful one. That's something. She was quiet. Then I love you. I know I've got no right to say it, but I do. Always have, even when I was stealing from you. I know, Mom. It doesn't fix anything, but I know. We hung up perhaps our last real conversation before cancer or justice claimed her. That night, Grandpa slept peacefully for the first time in years. Rebecca curled up in the chair beside him, exhausted but present. Tyler sat by the window writing what he said was a letter to every person he'd wronged. I stood in the hallway watching the media vans finally pack up and leave. The story would continue, trials and testimonies, but the acute crisis had passed. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, but this time not threatening. Miss Hartley, I represent a publishing house interested in your family's story. 7-figure advance possible. Please contact at your convenience. I deleted it. Our story wasn't for sale. It was for surviving, for warning others, for healing. The media exposure that could have destroyed us had instead saved us, shining light into darkness until even criminals couldn't stand the glare. Sometimes the best weapon against evil is simple truth broadcast, loud enough that everyone has to see. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Mom's ongoing testimony, Tyler's legal battles, Grandpa's continued recovery, building a real relationship with Rebecca and her children. But tonight, we were alive together and finally free from the shadows that had haunted our family for 30 years. The truth had set us free, bruised, broken, but free. The federal courthouse in Indianapolis stood like a fortress against the January cold. 6 weeks after Dimitri's death, the real battle was just beginning. Today marked the start of the United States versus Martha Hartley, the first of many trials that would dissect 30 years of crime. I sat in the gallery between Grandpa and Rebecca, watching my mother enter in shackles. The cancer had taken its toll. She'd lost 40 pounds, her hair gone from chemo they'd allowed her to receive in custody, but her eyes remained sharp, defiant. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Newcomb. Judge Newcomb, known for her no-nonsense approach to organized crime, took her seat. The prosecution team, led by Assistant U.S. Attorney Michael Chen, no relation to Rebecca or the journalist, looked confident. 37 boxes of evidence lined their tables. Is the defendant ready to proceed? Judge Newcomb asked. Mom's lawyer, a public defender named Sandra Williams, who'd drawn the short straw, stood. Your Honor, my client wishes to make a statement. This is highly irregular, Counselor. My client is terminal, Your Honor. She'd like to address the court before we begin. The judge considered, then nodded. Proceed, but briefly. Mom stood gripping the defense table for support. Your Honor, I'm guilty of everything. I don't want a trial. I want to confess fully and completely in exchange for consideration on where I serve my remaining time. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Even her lawyer looked surprised. Prosecutor Chen stood quickly. Your Honor, while we appreciate the defendant's candor, the people have the right to present our case. The public deserves to hear the full extent of these crimes. I'll give them more than your case ever could, Mom shot back. I'll give them everything. Every crime, every conspirator, every dirty secret. But I do it my way in my time. Your Honor, Williams interjected, my client is proposing a comprehensive allocution, full confession in open court, waiving all rights in exchange for serving her sentence in a medical facility where she can receive proper cancer treatment. Judge Newcomb looked intrigued. Mr. Chen response. The prosecutor huddled with his team, then stood. We'd need guarantees, full testimony, no Fifth Amendment assertions, complete cooperation, including testifying in all related trials. Agreed, Mom said immediately. I'm dying anyway. Might as well die honest. We'll need a recess to discuss terms, the judge decided. 1 hour. As the court cleared, I approached the barrier. Mom, what are you doing? The right thing for once? Don't look so shocked. But a full confession, they could give you life. I've got 3 months, maybe 6. What's life compared to that? She smiled sadly. Besides, somebody should tell the whole truth. Might as well be the one who lived it. During recess, Tyler's hearing began 3 courtrooms down. I slipped in to watch. He stood before Judge Harrison, pleading guilty to federal wire fraud, charity fraud, and conspiracy charges. Mr. Hartley, the judge said sternly, you stole from veterans, from people who served our country. How do you plead? Guilty, Your Honor, deeply, shamefully guilty. The pre-sentencing report indicates you're cooperating fully. Yes, Your Honor, I've provided everything I know about Volkov's operations and my mother's crimes. Sentencing is set for March 15th. You're looking at 15 to 20 years, Mr. Hartley. Use the time until then to continue making amends. Tyler nodded, accepting his fate. As guards led him away, our eyes met. I nodded once, acknowledging his courage, if not forgiving his crimes. Back in Mom's courtroom, the deal was struck. She would confess everything over multiple days of testimony. In exchange, she'd serve her time at the Federal Medical Center in Rochester, Minnesota, receiving cancer treatment while imprisoned. Mrs. Hartley, Judge Newcomb said formally, please begin your allocution. Mom stood again, steadier now. My name is Martha Jane Hartley. I am 58 years old. I have been a criminal since I was 23. It started with theft from my father's school fundraisers. For 3 hours she spoke. Every crime cataloged, every victim named, every conspirator identified. The court reporter struggled to keep up. The gallery sat mesmerized by the scope of criminality one woman could achieve. She named 17 corrupt police officers, 3 judges, 21 business owners who laundered money, and 43 individuals who'd participated in various schemes. Each name caused ripples as FBI agents in the gallery texted furiously coordinating new arrests. The elderly victims, she continued, voice cracking, they trusted me. Mrs. Morrison's husband died alone because I took money meant for his care. Mrs. Chen starved because I stole her food budget. Mr. Williams fell and lay there for 2 days because I'd fired his aide and pocketed the salary. She listed every elderly victim, every dollar stolen, every life destroyed. Grandpa wept silently beside me as the magnitude of suffering became clear. My father, she said, looking directly at him. I stole approximately $400,000 meant for his care over 2 years. I canceled his heart surgery. I let him sleep in a basement while spending his money at casinos. I planned multiple ways to kill him for insurance money. That's enough for today, Judge Newcomb finally said. We'll resume tomorrow. As they led Mom away, she mouthed, I'm sorry to Grandpa. He nodded, too overwhelmed to respond. Outside the courthouse, media waited. I gave a brief statement while Grandpa and Rebecca escaped through a side door. The headlines that night screamed, Crime Matriarch Confesses All in Biggest Organized Crime Testimony in Decade. Day 2 brought more revelations. Mom detailed Volkov's operations with precision that impressed even hardened prosecutors. Money flows, murder plots, political corruption. She'd kept records of everything, insurance against betrayal that now served justice. Senator Richardson took $50,000 to kill the casino regulation bill, she testified. I delivered it personally to his lake house. His wife served lemonade while we counted bills in their kitchen. By noon, Senator Richardson was in FBI custody. Day 3 focused on the murder conspiracies. Mom's voice went flat as she described planning her own father's death. I researched methods. Insulin overdose medication interactions staged falls. I consulted with others who'd done it. Mrs. Patricia Henley, she'd successfully killed her mother with morphine overdose, gave me detailed instructions. Mrs. Henley was arrested during lunch recess. Tyler testified on day 4, detailing his gambling addiction and descent into crime. He broke down describing how he'd suggested targeting me. I told them Georgia had millions, showed them her LinkedIn, her apartment building. I painted a target on my own sister because I couldn't face my debts. When they started surveilling her, I said nothing. I'm worthless, completely worthless. You're testifying, the prosecutor pointed out. That's worth something. It's worth nothing compared to what I destroyed. By week's end, the testimony had implicated over 200 individuals. The FBI called it the most comprehensive criminal confession in modern history. Arrests rolled across 3 states like dominoes falling. Mom's final day of testimony focused on redemption. I don't expect forgiveness, she said, gaunt and exhausted. I don't deserve it, but maybe my words can prevent another Martha Hartley, another family destroyed by greed and addiction. What would you tell your younger self, the prosecutor asked. That the first crime is the hardest. After that, each one gets easier until you can't remember who you were before. That family isn't an ATM. That love isn't measured in money. That dying with a clear conscience is worth more than living with wealth. Judge Newcomb delivered the sentence, 40 years for federal crimes to be served concurrently with state charges at the medical facility as agreed. With cancer, she'd likely serve 3 to 6 months. Mrs. Hartley, the judge said, your cooperation has been extraordinary, but it doesn't erase your crimes. You destroyed lives, betrayed family, corrupted institutions. You represent everything wrong with choosing easy money over hard work. May your remaining time bring reflection and whatever peace is possible. They led Mom away for the last time. I'd never see her free again. Outside, Grandpa waited by the car. How do you feel? I asked. Empty, he said. 40 years of visiting my daughter in prison, knowing I'll be gone long before her sentence ends. It's justice, but it tastes like ash. Tyler's sentencing came 2 weeks later. The judge, influenced by his cooperation and genuine remorse, gave him 12 years with possibility of reduction for continued assistance. He'd be eligible for parole in 7. I'll write, he promised as they took him away. Every week, whether you read them or not. Rebecca and I spent the following weeks attending the trial spawned by Mom and Tyler's testimony. Corrupt cops, dirty politicians, business leaders who'd seemed pillars of the community, all falling like dominoes. The elderly victims got some restitution from seized assets, not enough to make them whole, but something. Mrs. Morrison used hers to create a foundation monitoring home care agencies. Mr. Williams's family started a support group for families of elderly fraud victims. 3 months after her confession, Mom called from the medical facility. The cancer spread to my brain, she said matter-of-factly. Weeks, not months now. I want to see you all one last time. Mom, please, Georgia, let me see Daddy once more. Let me die with family near, even if I don't deserve it. I looked at Grandpa Healthy, now living in a beautiful assisted care facility where Rebecca and I could visit daily. He'd rebuilt his life without his criminal daughter. I'll ask him, I promised. Grandpa's response surprised me. Of course I'll go. She's still my daughter. I'll hate what she did forever, but I love who she was before. That little girl who played in my office while I did paperwork, I'll say goodbye to her. We drove to Rochester on a cold March morning. Grandpa, Rebecca, me, even Tyler brought from federal prison in chains. The whole family gathering Mom had wanted, just not how anyone imagined. She was skeletal, now barely recognizable, but she smiled when we entered. My family, she whispered. Thank you. We spent 3 hours together. No talk of crimes or trials, just Memories of better times, Christmas mornings before the gambling, summer vacations before the theft, the family we'd been before choices destroyed us. I'm sorry, she said finally. It's not enough, will never be enough, but I'm sorry. We know, Grandpa said, holding her hand. Rest now, Martha, just rest. Martha Jane Hartley died 2 days later alone in her room as rain pelted the windows. The woman who'd stolen millions, destroyed dozens of lives, died owning nothing but regrets. Her obituary ran nationwide, a cautionary tale of how greed corrupts, but we buried her quietly, just family in a plot beside Grandma. Whatever she'd become, she'd started as Harold's daughter. That earned her a place in the family plot, if not the family honor. Standing at her grave, Tyler in chains beside me, Grandpa spoke quietly. The legal reckoning is over. Martha paid her price. Tyler's paying his. Now we rebuild. We honor our name by living better than they did. We choose family, choose honesty, choose love over money. That's our reckoning. That's our redemption. Rebecca's twins threw flowers on the grave, too young to understand their aunt's crimes. Maybe that was blessing enough, new family untainted by old sins. The trials would continue for years. Mom's testimony would convict hundreds. Tyler would serve his time writing letters I'd eventually read. The elderly victims would heal or not, supported by what restitution we could provide. But the personal reckoning was complete. Justice served, prices paid, truth told. Time to build something better from the ruins. The news reached me at 2 a.m. 6 months after Mom's funeral. Agent Chen's voice was tight with urgency. Georgia, Tyler's in protective custody. He was attacked in prison. It's bad. I sat up instantly awake. How bad? Stabbed 4 times. He's in surgery now. The attackers were connected to Richardson's people revenge for his testimony. Senator Richardson, serving 20 years, thanks to Tyler's cooperation, apparently still had reach. We're moving him to a secure medical facility once he's stable, Chen continued. But Georgia, this changes things. Tyler was supposed to testify in 3 more trials. Without him, cases could collapse. Exactly. We need to discuss options. I promised to meet her at the hospital and woke Rebecca. We drove through empty streets, both thinking about our brother we barely knew, fighting for his life. Tyler survived surgery, but remained critical. Through the ICU window, he looked fragile, nothing like the cocky gambler who'd caused so much damage. Machines breathed for him, monitored every heartbeat. The doctors give him 50-50, Chen told us. The blade missed his heart by centimeters. What about protection? Federal marshals 24/7. But if Richardson could reach him once? She didn't need to finish. Tyler would never be safe in general population. 3 days later, he woke. I was alone in the room, having sent Rebecca to rest. Georgia. His voice was barely a whisper. I'm here. They said they'd finish the job. Said my testimony dies with me. You're under protection now. Marshals everywhere. He tried to laugh, winced at the pain. Protection didn't stop 4 guys with shanks. I'm dead, Georgia. Just a matter of when. Don't talk like that. No, listen. He gripped my hand with surprising strength. I need to tell you something about Volkov, about the money. What money? Volkov's dead. The 10 million Grandpa wired. I know where it went. I leaned closer. Tyler, that money's gone. Volkov took it to his grave. No, he moved it that night. I helped set up the accounts years ago, taught him about cryptocurrency. Georgia, there's a wallet with 10 million in Bitcoin. I have the keys. You have access to $10 million. Had. Past tense. Feds don't know about it. Nobody does. I kept it as insurance, figured if everything went bad, I'd have an escape fund. Tyler, that's evidence. You have to tell them. Or he said carefully, I could give it to you, for the victims, for Grandpa. Make something right from all my wrongs. I stared at him. That would be a federal crime, concealing assets, money laundering. Only if they find out. The wallet's untraceable if done right. 10 million could help a lot of elderly victims, could secure Grandpa's care forever. I can't believe you're suggesting this. I'm dying, Georgia. If not today, then tomorrow or next week. Richardson has deep pockets and long reach. Let me do one good thing. One clean thing. By committing another crime. By returning stolen money to victims. How is that worse than letting it sit in digital limbo forever? I stood to leave. You're delirious from pain medication. We never had this conversation. Georgia, wait. He pulled a medical chart from his bedside, scribbled something on the back. If you change your mind, that's all you need. I took the paper without looking, shoved it in my pocket. Get some rest, and tell the FBI about the wallet. But Tyler never got the chance. That night, despite marshals and medical staff, someone injected air into his IV line. The embolism killed him in minutes. By the time alarms sounded, he was gone. The investigation found nothing. No cameras caught the killer. No witnesses saw anything unusual. Tyler died holding his secrets, another casualty of testifying against power. At his funeral, attended only by family and federal agents, I fingered the paper in my pocket, still unread, still burning with possibility. He tried to make amends, Grandpa said at the graveside. That matters. Does it? I asked. He died a criminal in prison. Mom died a criminal in custody. Our family name is synonymous with crime. Our family name is what we make it going forward, Rebecca said firmly. Their crimes don't define us. That night, alone in my apartment, I finally looked at Tyler's note, a string of numbers and letters, meaningless to anyone who didn't understand cryptocurrency. Below it, in Tyler's shaky writing, for the forgotten victims. Make it right. I spent hours researching Bitcoin wallets, recovery keys, blockchain technology. The wallet Tyler described existed holding exactly 10 million in Bitcoin untouched since Volkov's death. Digital money in digital limbo waiting for someone with the keys. The ethical weight crushed me. Taking it was a crime, but leaving it meant elderly victims would never see restitution. Insurance didn't cover criminal theft. Government compensation was minimal. That money could change lives. I called Rebecca. Hypothetically, if you found stolen money and could return it to victims without anyone knowing, would you? That's not hypothetical, is it? Just answer. She was quiet for a long moment. The legal answer is no. Turn it over to authorities. But the human answer, those victims lost everything. If I could make them whole, you'd commit a federal crime. I'd sleep better knowing Mrs. Morrison could afford quality care for her remaining years. Knowing Mr. Williams could move somewhere safe. Is that wrong? I don't know anymore. The next week brought more funerals. 3 elderly victims who died waiting for justice. Mrs. Chen, who trusted my mother with her life savings, died in a state nursing home. At her service, her daughter wept over not affording better care. If only we could recover something, she said. Anything to give Mom dignity in her final days. That night, I accessed the wallet. Moving cryptocurrency isn't like bank transfers. It's anonymous if done right, traceable if you make mistakes. I spent weeks learning, preparing, planning. $10 million sitting there while victims suffered. Finally, I acted. First, I created dozens of smaller wallets, splitting the fortune into manageable chunks. Then, I researched every victim from Mom's testimony, their locations, needs, family situations. Mrs. Morrison received an anonymous cashier's check for $200,000. For your husband's memory, the note said, from someone who understands loss. Mr. Williams' family found $50,000 in cash in their mailbox. Your father deserved better. This won't fix the past, but might ease the future. One by one, I distributed Tyler's tainted legacy. Each victim received proportional compensation for their losses, delivered anonymously untraceable. The FBI investigated, of course, but cryptocurrency properly handled leaves no trails. It's like a guardian angel, Mrs. Morrison told the news. someone who cares about us forgotten victims. Grandpa received nothing directly that would be too suspicious, but his assisted living facility received an anonymous donation ensuring his care for life. Rebecca's children's college funds grew mysteriously. Every elderly victim Mom had cheated found relief arriving in untraceable ways. Agent Chen questioned me, of course. Strange timing, these anonymous gifts, right after Tyler's death. Tyler died with nothing I said truthfully. He had no assets to distribute. But he had knowledge. Maybe he told someone about hidden funds. He was delirious from pain medication, talked about wanting to fix things, but never specifics. She studied me carefully. You know I have to investigate. I know. Do what you need to do. The investigation found nothing. I'd learned from the best criminals in my family using their techniques for good instead of evil. The money disappeared into victims' lives, improving care, providing dignity, restoring some faith. But guilt ate at me. I'd become what I'd fought against, a criminal justifying crimes for good reasons. Late nights, I'd stare at the ceiling wondering if this was how Mom started. One justified theft leading to another. Your troubled grandpa observed during a visit. Just thinking about choices, how one decision can change everything. Like your choice to come home for Christmas. Something like that. He took my hand. Georgia, we all face moments where the legal choice and the moral choice diverge. What matters is the heart behind the decision. Are you choosing selfishness or service? What if you can't tell the difference anymore? Then you stop, step back, reassess. The dangerous path is when you stop questioning yourself. That night, I destroyed every trace of the wallet access. The remaining $1 million I donated to legitimate elderly care charities through proper channels. Tyler's blood money was gone, transformed into hope for those who'd lost it. At Tyler's headstone, I left a note: you made it right. Rest now. The FBI eventually closed their investigation, unable to trace the mysterious benefactor. Victims stopped receiving windfalls, but most had gotten enough to stabilize their lives. The case became legend, the phantom philanthropist who'd returned stolen millions. Think they'll ever find who did it? Rebecca asked one day. Does it matter the victims got help? The money's gone. Justice got served, just not through official channels. Tyler would be proud. Tyler would be horrified I took such risks, but yes, maybe proud too. We stood in Grandpa's room watching him teach card games to other residents. Healthy, happy, secure. The family saved even if salvation required sins. What now? Rebecca asked. Back to normal life? Is there such a thing after all this? We make our own normal. Sunday dinners with Grandpa, visits to Mom and Tyler's graves, building the family they couldn't. That night, Agent Chen called one last time. We're officially closing the benefactor case, she said, but Georgia, off the record, thank you. For what? For whatever you didn't do. Those victims needed help the system couldn't provide. Sometimes justice wears a badge. Sometimes it works in shadows. Both have value. I don't know what you mean. Of course not. Take care, Georgia. Your family's paid enough prices. I hung up, feeling a chapter close. Tyler was gone, taking his secrets to the grave. The money was distributed, victims helped. My crimes, if they were crimes, served a purpose greater than greed. But late at night, I sometimes wondered, was this how Mom justified her first theft? Tyler, his first bet. The road to hell paved with good intentions. Then I'd remember Mrs. Morrison's tears of relief, Mr. Williams' daughter, able to afford proper care, all the elderly victims given dignity in their final years. Perhaps some roads are worth walking, even if they lead through shadows. Perhaps redemption sometimes requires getting your hands dirty. Perhaps the Hartley family curse could become a blessing, criminal knowledge, used to heal rather than harm. Tyler collapsed, trying to do right. In death, he succeeded more than life ever allowed. That had to be enough. 1 year after that dark Christmas, I stood in the doorway of Grandpa's new home watching him prune roses in the garden. The assisted living facility had become something more, a real home filled with laughter, friends, and purpose. His heart surgery scars had faded, but more importantly, the shadow of betrayal had lifted from his eyes. Looking good, Mr. H called Dorothy his neighbor and new chess partner. At 75, she'd decided Harold Hartley was quite the catch. "Just trying to keep up with you, Dot," he replied, that familiar twinkle returning to his eyes. I smiled, remembering how broken he'd been in that basement. Now he led the resident council organized movie nights and had even started teaching history classes to local high school students who visited weekly. "He's like a different person," Rebecca said, joining me. "Or maybe the same person he always was, just free. Free from carrying Mom's secrets, Tyler's debts, the weight of trying to save people who didn't want saving." Rebecca's twins ran past chasing butterflies in the garden. They called him Grandpa Harold, now filling a void in his life and theirs, family rebuilt from ashes. My phone buzzed. Amanda Chen, the journalist, texting about a follow-up story 1 year later. I'd been fielding these requests for weeks as the anniversary approached. "Maybe we should do it," Rebecca suggested. "Show people that healing is possible, that families can survive even this." That afternoon, Amanda arrived with a small crew. This time, no dramatic hospital setting. Just Grandpa's sunny living room photos of the new family covering every surface. "Mr. Hartley, Amanda began a year ago. Your family's story shocked the nation. Where are you now?" "I'm home," he said simply. "Not the building I owned, but here surrounded by people who care about me. That's home." "Your daughter died in prison. Your grandson, too. How do you process that grief?" "One day at a time. Martha wasn't just the criminal who betrayed me. She was also the baby I held, the child I taught to ride a bike, the teenager I walked down the aisle. I mourn all versions of her." "And Tyler?" "Tyler found courage at the end. His testimony saved lives by convicting dangerous people. I choose to remember that version of my grandson." Amanda turned to me. "Georgia, you gave up your career to save your grandfather. Any regrets?" "I didn't give it up. I relocated it." I smiled. "I run the Midwest office now. Turns out New York isn't the only place to build a career. Plus, I can have Sunday dinner with family here." "Speaking of family, Rebecca, you've become central to this new dynamic." Rebecca nodded. "Finding my father and siblings through tragedy wasn't ideal, but we don't get to choose our origin stories, only our next chapters. This chapter is about healing." There are rumors about an anonymous benefactor who helped the elderly victims. Any thoughts? We all shook our heads innocently. Some secrets were worth keeping. "What would you tell other families facing similar betrayals?" Grandpa leaned forward. "That family isn't obligation, it's choice. You can't save someone determined to destroy themselves, but you can save yourself. You can build something better with whoever's left standing." "That sounds like you've cut off all ties to Martha and Tyler's memory." "No," I corrected. "We visit their graves monthly. We remember the good while acknowledging the bad. They're part of our story, just not the authors anymore." After the interview, we had our regular Sunday dinner. Grandpa cooked his famous pot roast while Rebecca's twins helped set the table. Normal domestic healing. "I've been thinking," Grandpa announced over dessert, "about the house." The family home sat empty. Still crime scene taped a monument to our darkest time. "What about it?" I asked. "I want to donate it. Turn it into a center for elderly victims of family fraud. Counseling, support groups, resources. Let something good grow where bad things happened." "That's beautiful," Rebecca said. "Mom would hate it." "No," Grandpa corrected gently. "The criminal Martha would hate it. But the daughter I raised before addiction took her would understand. This honors who she could have been." The next months were busy with renovation plans. The basement where Grandpa had slept became a counseling room. Mom's room transformed into a resource library. Tyler's space became a meeting room for support groups. Opening day brought hundreds, elderly victims, their families, social workers, attorneys specializing in elder abuse. Mrs. Morrison cut the ribbon, tears streaming. This house saw terrible things, she said, but today it becomes a lighthouse for those lost in family betrayal's darkness. Harold Hartley turned his pain into purpose. We can too. The center thrived. Support groups met weekly. Pro bono lawyers helped victims recover assets. Counselors guided families through the unique grief of loving someone who hurt you. I often found Grandpa there mentoring other victims, teaching them what he'd learned about surviving family betrayal while keeping your heart open. The opposite of their cruelty isn't becoming cruel ourselves, he'd tell them. It's choosing radical kindness despite the pain. One evening, a woman approached me at the center. "You're Georgia Hartley." I tensed, never sure if recognition brought gratitude or anger. "Yes. I'm Jennifer Walsh, my father. Your mother stole his life savings. He died thinking he was a burden to us because he had nothing left. I'm so sorry. I hated your family for so long, wanted revenge." Then that anonymous money appeared, not enough to replace what was lost, but enough to know someone cared. Was it you? "I don't know what you mean." She smiled sadly. "Of course not. But whoever it was, tell them it saved me. Not financially, spiritually, knowing someone saw our pain and acted. That's what let me forgive. Forgive my mother. Forgive myself for not seeing the signs, for trusting the wrong person, for letting hate consume me. Forgiveness isn't for them, it's for us." That night, I found Grandpa in the garden planting new roses where the old ones had died. "Spring's coming," he said. "Time for new growth." "How do you do it? Stay so positive after everything." "Because I've learned something important. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Martha and Tyler chose to spread their pain, multiply it, weaponize it. We choose to transform it into something healing. Is it really that simple? Simple, yes. Easy, no. Every day I choose not to let bitterness take root. Some days are harder than others, but look what grows when we choose healing. He gestured to the house lit warmly, full of people finding hope after betrayal. Rebecca joined us, twins asleep in their stroller. The news wants another follow-up. The Tyler Foundation is getting attention. We'd created it quietly, a scholarship fund for children of incarcerated parents. Tyler's name on something positive, helping kids avoid his path. Let them cover it, I decided. Maybe it helps another family. As we headed inside, I noticed a new photo on Grandpa's mantle. The whole family at last week's Easter dinner. Him at the center, Rebecca and I, flanking him, the twins making bunny ears. Normal, happy, healed, but also incomplete. The shadows of two missing family members hovering at the edges. Not erased, just integrated into a larger story of survival. "Think they can see us?" Grandpa asked, following my gaze. "Martha and Tyler. Think they know we're okay?" "I hope so. I hope they know we love them despite everything, that we're honoring the good while learning from the bad. That's all anyone can ask for," he said, "to be remembered wholly good and bad and still loved." That night, I updated my journal, a habit begun in those first terrible days. The early entries were dark, full of rage and betrayal, but slowly they'd shifted, anger giving way to understanding, hurt transforming to purpose, the journal of a journey from victim to survivor to thriver. My phone rang, the assisted living facility. "Miss Hartley, your grandfather asked us to call. Mrs. Dorothy has agreed to marry him. He wanted you to be the first to know." I laughed, really laughed for the first time in years. Grandpa finding love at 83, choosing joy after sorrow, the ultimate healing. "Tell him I'll plan the best wedding Indiana has ever seen." "He said you'd say that. He also said to keep it simple, just family and friends, the real kind." Family and friends, the real kind, those who stood by you in darkness and celebrated your light, Who knew your worst chapters but helped write better ones? I thought of Mom's victims slowly healing, Tyler's scholarship recipients getting chances he never had, the house of horrors becoming a beacon of hope, Grandpa finding love, Rebecca finding her father. Me finding that home isn't a place, but people who choose you daily. The healing had begun, not complete, never complete when loss carved such deep grooves, but begun. And that was miracle enough. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more anniversaries, more grief waves, more choices between bitterness and hope. But tonight in a garden where new roses grew from old soil, a family broken by betrayal had chosen to heal, separately and together, honoring the past while building the future. The Hartley curse broken not by forgetting, but by transforming. Pain into purpose, betrayal into service, a family destroyed becoming a family reborn. Spring was coming. Time for new growth indeed. 3 years. That's how long it had taken to rebuild from the ashes of that devastating Christmas. As I stood in the renovated family home now buzzing with activity from the Elder Fraud Recovery Center, I could barely recognize the place where our nightmare had begun. Georgia Dorothy called out, "Harold's looking for you. Says it's important." Dorothy Hartley, my new step-grandmother. Their wedding 6 months ago had been perfect, simple, and full of joy in the facility garden. At 86 and 78, they proved love had no expiration date. I found Grandpa in what used to be the basement, now a bright counseling room with windows installed where none had been before. He stood with Rebecca and her twins, now 8 and thriving. "There you are," he said, eyes twinkling with secret knowledge. "We have something to show you." Rebecca pulled out her laptop, grinning. "Remember how we've been trying to track down more of Volkov's victims to distribute the remaining settlement funds?" I nodded. The government had seized millions from the criminal organization, finally releasing funds for victim restitution 2 years after the trials ended. "Well," Rebecca continued, "we found something unexpected, or someone rather." On the screen appeared a woman in her 60s, silver hair and familiar eyes. My heart stopped. "Is that?" "Your Aunt Grandpa confirmed. My firstborn daughter, Rebecca Chen's mother. She goes by Chen Mei Lin now." The woman on the video call smiled nervously. "Hello, Georgia. I've heard so much about you." My mind reeled. Another family member hidden all these years. Mom never said anything. Martha knew, Grandpa said quietly. "It's why she banned certain names. She was always jealous that I had another daughter, one who chose distance over dysfunction." Mei Lin's story unfolded over the next hour. A teenage romance, a baby born. Before Grandpa married my grandmother, cultural pressures that led to separation. She'd been raised by her mother in California, maintaining minimal contact until Martha's crimes made even that dangerous. I watched from afar, Mei Lin explained. Watched Harold build his life, have his family. When Martha's troubles began, my mother warned me to stay away, said some poison spreads to whatever it touches. "But you're here now, Rebecca," her daughter said softly. "The poison is gone. Martha's gone. The danger has passed, and I want to know my father before it's too late. My daughter, my granddaughters, my niece." The twins who'd been quietly coloring looked up. "We have another grandma." "If she wants you," I said, looking at Mei Lin. "Do you?" Tears streamed down her face. "More than anything, I've lost too much time to fear already." 2 weeks later, Mei Lin arrived in Indiana. Watching her embrace Grandpa for the first time in over 40 years broke something open in all of us. Here was healing we hadn't even known we needed. "My firstborn," he whispered into her silver hair. "I never stopped loving you." "I know, Dad. I always knew." The reunion brought unexpected revelations. Mei Lin was a social worker dedicating her life to helping families torn apart by addiction and crime. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. Maybe it's genetic, she said wryly. This need to fix broken families just took different paths. She integrated seamlessly as if she'd always been there. The twins adored their new grandmother. Dorothy welcomed her with open arms. The family grew stronger with each addition. One evening, as we gathered for Sunday dinner, now a tradition that included 12 people instead of 3, Grandpa stood to speak. 3 years ago, I thought I'd lost everything. My daughter to crime, my grandson to addiction, my faith in family itself. But look at this table. We did. Rebecca and her husband Mark, the twins, Mei Lin, Dorothy, me. Even Mrs. Morrison and Mr. Williams' honorary family now. The broken pieces had reformed into something beautiful. We're proof, he continued, that family isn't just blood. It's choice. It's showing up. It's choosing love over fear, healing over hatred. Martha and Tyler are gone, but their legacy isn't just pain. It's this. All of you. The family they could never be, but that grew from their ashes. To chosen family, Dorothy raised her glass. To chosen family, we echoed. After dinner, I walked through the center. Support groups met in every room. In Mom's old bedroom, elderly victims shared stories and strategies. In Tyler's space, families learned to spot financial abuse signs. The House of Secrets had become a house of healing. My phone buzzed. Another reporter wanting an update on the Hartley Christmas miracle, as they dubbed it. What miracle, I'd asked the first reporter who used that phrase. Surviving what your family did. Thriving after such betrayal. That's miraculous. Maybe they were right. But it didn't feel miraculous. It felt like choice after choice to heal instead of hate. To build instead of burn. To love despite the scars. In the garden, I found the memorial Rebecca had insisted on. 2 plaques, simple and honest. Martha Jane Hartley, 1965-2023. Daughter, mother, cautionary tale. May her struggles save others. Tyler James Hartley, 1995-2023. Son, brother, truth teller at the end. May his courage inspire change. Not whitewashed, not glorified, but acknowledged. Part of our story even in death. Do you forgive them? Maylin asked, joining me. Some days. Other days I'm angry. Most days I'm just sad for the lives they wasted. But I don't let it consume me anymore. That's its own forgiveness of yourself for surviving when they didn't. A year later at the center's anniversary gala, hundreds gathered to celebrate. Victims who'd found hope. Families who'd learned to protect their elderly. Lawyers who'd recovered millions in stolen assets. The ripple effects of our pain becoming waves of healing. Amanda Chen, the journalist who'd covered our story from the beginning, served as MCs. The Hartley story captivated us because it showed the worst of family betrayal. But tonight, we celebrate how they transformed that betrayal into this beacon of hope. From a grandfather sleeping in a basement to leading a movement. From a granddaughter who lost trust to one who rebuilt it. From scattered victims to an army of survivors. The crowd erupted in applause as Grandpa took the stage. At 86, he commanded attention with quiet dignity. Thank you all for being here, for proving that Martha and Tyler's crimes didn't win. Every person helped here, every family protected, every senior who sleeps safely knowing their children can't steal their future. That's victory. Not the victory I wanted spending holidays with my daughter and grandson, but the victory we needed. Purpose from pain, beauty from ashes. He announced the center's expansion, 3 new locations across the Midwest, the Tyler Foundation doubling its scholarships, a Mei Lin Chen Wing for immigrant seniors facing family exploitation. We name these not to glorify the criminals or the distant, he explained, but to show that every story can be redeemed, every ending rewritten, every family rebuilt even if it looks nothing like what we planned. As the gala wound down, I found myself on the porch where I'd first confronted Tyler's friends years ago. So much had changed. The house, the family, me. Rebecca joined me, glass of wine in hand. Remember standing here that first day? Could you have imagined this? Never. I thought I was just coming home for Christmas, save Grandpa, and get back to my life. Instead, I found my life. My real life, my chosen family, my purpose. The twins ran past, chasing fireflies with other children from the center's family programs. Normal kids living normal lives untouched by the darkness that had created this place of light. What do you think Mom would say about all this? Rebecca asked. The mom who stole and lied, she'd hate it. But somewhere deep beneath the addiction and crime, there was a woman who loved her father, who maybe wanted to be better, but couldn't find the way. I think that woman would be relieved that it all led to something good. And Tyler? Tyler would be amazed that his name is on scholarships, that kids get chances because of his failures. He always wanted to matter. Now he does just not how he imagined. As guests departed, many stopped to share their stories. Elderly parents saved from exploitation, adult children who'd learned to spot the warning signs, families rebuilding after betrayal, each one a testament to transformation. Grandpa and Dorothy retired early, his heart still requiring careful management. Mei Lin helped Rebecca wrangle the twins into the car. I stayed behind to lock up, walking through rooms that had housed such pain and now held such purpose. In my office formerly, the kitchen where I'd found that devastating note, I sat at my desk. The wall held photos of every family helped, every life changed. Hundreds of faces, each representing a choice to heal rather than harm. My phone buzzed. An email from a publisher, the 5th this month, wanting to buy our story for a book or movie. I deleted it without reading. Our story wasn't for sale. It was for sharing freely with anyone who needed hope after family betrayal. The speeches, the interviews, the center visits, all free. Pain transformed to purpose shouldn't come with a price tag. Outside, snow began to fall. Another Christmas approaching, the 4th since everything changed. This one would be different. Full, healed, whole in ways we'd never been before the breaking. I thought about that scared, angry woman who'd flown home to darkness and abandonment, who'd found her grandfather eating alone in the dark, who'd discovered betrayal so deep it should have destroyed us all. Instead, we'd chosen differently, chosen family over isolation, chosen healing over hatred, chosen to build something beautiful where something ugly had been. The Hartley curse had become the Hartley calling, not perfect, still scarred, but proof that families can survive the unsurvivable, that love multiplies when divided among chosen hearts, that sometimes you have to lose everything to find what really matters. As I locked the center doors, I smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new victims seeking help, new families learning to rebuild, new chances to prove that betrayal doesn't get the final word. But tonight, snow fell on a house redeemed, on a family reborn, on hearts that had learned the hardest lesson. Sometimes the family you build from ashes is stronger than the one you were born into. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what's truly valuable. Sometimes the worst Christmas leads to the best life. I drove home to my apartment, no longer a refuge from family, but a resting place between gatherings. Tomorrow was Sunday dinner. 12 people crowding around Grandpa's table, laughter replacing tears, stories of hope replacing memories of betrayal. The family I'd wanted had been destroyed. The family I'd needed had been born from its ruins, and that made all the difference. As for what happens next, what do you think makes a family truly unbreakable? Have you ever had to choose between the family you were born into and the family you've built? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear that healing is possible after family betrayal. Like this video if you believe in second chances and new beginnings. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of triumph over adversity. Thank you for joining the Hartley family's journey. Remember, you can't choose your relatives, but you can always choose your family. Until next time, choose love, choose healing, choose hope.